Dawn, we're going to do the countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2.
Recording in progress.
The May 16th, 2024 meeting of the Brookline School Committee is called to order. I would like to read the letter from Town Clerk Ben Kaufman confirming that newly elected members have taken their oath of office. Let's say congratulations to Ms. Carolyn Thal, Dr. Jesse Hefner, and Ms. Sarah Mocktotter for winning their elections, and they've been elected to 3-year terms on the committee. Congratulations. The school committee chair and vice chair are to be, I'm sorry, I didn't read something. Thank you, Betsy. I read your eyes. I, Ben Kaufman, town clerk for the town of Brookline, duly qualified and acting as such, and having custody of the records, hereby certify that at the May 7th, 2024 annual town election held in accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 1, Jesse Hefter, Sarah Mocktotter, and Carolyn Thal were elected members of the school committee for the town of Brookline for a term of 3 years. I further certify, in accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 15, that Jesse Hefter, Sarah Mocktotter, and Carolyn Thal were sworn to the faithful performance of their duties as a member of the school committee for the town of Brookline. So at this time, the school committee chair and vice chair are to be elected for a 1-year term by a majority of those present. Unless a vote is taken to the contrary, no member may serve as chair for more than 2 consecutive 1-year terms. So at this time, I will ask if there is a nomination for someone for the office of chair. Let's see, Dr. Ehrenberg.
I'd like to nominate Andy for the position of chair.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Suzanne seconds. Is there any other nomination for the office of chair? Seeing none, I will ask that Ms. Fitzpatrick poll the members for a roll call vote to appoint Dr. Andy Liu to the office of chair.
So for the roll call vote, Stephen, how do you vote?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
Andy?
Abstain.
Sarah?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
And Val?
Yes.
Motion carries. Congratulations.
Motion carries. Congratulations, Dr. Liu. Is there a motion to nominate someone for the office of vice chair? Dr. Liu?
I'd like to nominate Suzanne.
Is there a second? Ms. Nobrega seconds. Is there any other nomination for the office of vice chair? Seeing none, Ms. Fitzpatrick will call the roll to appoint Ms. Federspiel to the office of vice chair.
Okay, roll call vote for Suzanne as vice chair. Stephen?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
And Valerie?
Yes.
Okay, there you have it. Congratulations, Suzanne.
Congratulations. So at this time, Betsy, you want to present the gavel?
Here you go, Dr. Liu.
All right, thank you very much. Yes, I hope to use this as little as possible. So, all right. So I think we need to switch some seats so that at least, well, I happen to be sitting alphabetically in the chair spot, but Suzanne, I think, should take her traditional vice chair seat. Yes.
Andy, is that your drink?
This, yes, it is.
Got the chairs, seltzer.
It is now. All right, so as his first official act, the chair moves to appoint Betsy Fitzpatrick to serve as the secretary of the school committee. Do I have a second? Mariah seconds. Are there any other nominations for that position? No. I see none, so let's move to a vote. Stephen?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Val?
A very enthusiastic yes.
And likewise, an enthusiastic yes from me. All right, so with that done, the school committee has been reorganized. So we can move on to our administrative business. Firstly, the consent agenda. Would anyone like to move that? Okay, Suzanne moves it. Do we have a second? From Stephen. So I'd like to draw attention in particular to the last item on the consent agenda. The BHS rowing team is going to the Nationals competition in Sarasota, Florida. This was a late addition to the docket because I think we only found out that they had qualified a few days ago. So congratulations to them. So let's have our vote on the consent agenda. Stephen?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. All right, next we have our annual vote on the question of school choice. So a little bit of background information on this. The school choice law, that's part of the Ed Reform Act of 1993, presumes that each school committee will admit non-resident students under the school choice program unless there's a vote to the contrary taken by June 1st of each year following a hearing on the issue. So the committee combined the hearing for school choice with our public hearing on the fiscal year 25 budget that occurred on February 1st, 2024. And in the past, we have not participated in school choice, and we've cited the following reasons. The reimbursement rate is substantially lower than the cost of educating one of our students, and the district has no excess capacity in its buildings. So our agenda tonight includes a possible vote to not participate in the school choice program for the coming school year, 2024-25. I would entertain a motion to not participate.
Before
Anyone
we
wants
do
to
that, can I ask questions?
Well, let's have the motion and then we can discuss.
It's a negative motion.
A negative, oh, you'd like to actually move that we do participate?
No, it's written as possible vote to not participate.
Right.
So,
So I'm entertaining motions to not participate.
well, I'm going to move it to participate,
Okay. Do we have a
only
second?
because I want to ask questions about it that, I mean, I don't know,
Okay, sure. Do we have a second to that?
probably not.
If not, then I don't-
Maybe if I could have
I
asked
think
my
we can discuss it.
questions before we insisted on having a motion, there might have been a second.
Well, I think
I
that-
seconded Mariah. I'm Mariah.
Thank you.
I think we have a motion and then we have the discussion.
Right, but I guess I got forwarded 2 weeks ago an email about Newton considering participating in this. I don't know if anyone else read that article. And I guess my questions are, what's the reimbursement rate? And first off, and just sort of like more questions about how it works. And we haven't had capacity in the past. Do we have capacity now that we want to consider this? I'm just sort of throwing open, it's been very reasonable to not participate in the past, given where everything was. And I think we're in a different place for the first time in a long time. And I'm just curious about the details of, for example, what is the reimbursement rate?
I think to get all that information, we'd probably need to postpone this vote to another meeting, right? So Betsy, do you think that it would make sense to try to gather all of this before, I suppose we meet next in 3 weeks? Right? And is there a deadline before then for us to take this vote?
So we have some information. I believe, Dr. Guillory, you could help me out here. I believe the reimbursement's something like $5,000.
Oh, that's it? It's nowhere near our actual cost of
No,
education?
no.
Okay.
I mean, there could be discussion on how that compares to the marginal cost of educating one more student, right? As opposed to the average cost of
I
educating.
don't think we're
each
ready to calculate marginal costs. I think we're only ready to calculate average costs, is my sense. Okay, I withdraw my motion.
All right.
Thank you.
So we can go back to the chair entertaining any motion to not participate if someone wants to make that.
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second. I'll second.
Okay, Jesse seconds. Is there any further discussion on that before we go to a vote? Okay, seeing none, let's have a vote. Stephen?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes as well. All right, that brings us to the end of our administrative business. Linus, you have the floor now for the superintendent's report and the spotlight on excellence.
All right, good evening, everyone. Great to be here with you this evening. We're going to walk through our superintendent's update tonight for May 16th, 2024. So by way of updating the committee, we have several surveys, screenings, and support services information that's out. One is a family culture and climate survey that's designed to better understand parent, guardian, and caregiver perceptions of their schools that their children attend. And we are encouraging all parents, guardians, and caregivers to take this survey. It's been sent out via the superintendent's newsletter, as well as several blasts on social media, et cetera. And the results from this survey, again, if we think about the alignment with our strategic plan, the results of this survey will, number one, help each school community understand how parents, or what parents are thinking about their individual school communities, as well as looking at what additional opportunities may be needed or missing from those various communities. So we look forward to hearing the results of those surveys at our June 6th meeting, and our Office of Student Services will be bringing that back to us. Likewise, our spring universal social emotional screening for students in grades 3 through 12 is also underway. And these results will be shared again at our fall, compared to our fall and winter surveys, and will also be shared at our June 6th meeting. And if you'll recall, especially for our newer members, that for our existing members, but for our newer members, Dr. Matt Dubois, our Director of our Guidance of Social Emotional Learning, often does a great job of walking us through those surveys. Additionally, this again is an opportunity for us to better understand what the unique needs of our communities, our students are, and better provide supports or professional development for our teachers, our educators, as well as for our school communities. And so again, that connection to our strategic plan of how can we as an organization better service and support our students, families, and caregivers. And then as a reminder, we have partnered with Care Solace as a confidential care coordination services for mental health needs for those that need that. And that can be accessed under caresolace.com/site/Brookline. We also want to make aware, and I think everyone was present last night at the Finance Subcommittee meeting, and you heard or saw the report or some of the details around our cost overages, with transportation being one of the largest drivers of that. And again, for those that may recall last year when we were developing the budget, one of the things that we were quite concerned about is the Office of Operational, and I forget the D, Susan. It's OOD, I think, or OSD. Talked about this notion that service providers for out-of-district or out-of-district schools could charge up to a 14% increase there in those costs. And so we are realizing some of those costs this year. Typically, that number has been around 2 to 3% as costs. And a couple of months ago, the Tri-County Superintendents, it's a group of about 33 of us, met with various members of the House to express our concerns going into this next fiscal year about the budgetary concerns. And I think we're seeing some good news in that direction, that they at least heard us around some of those concerns with costs. That's not necessarily helping us this year, but that was many districts' concern that we would run, Dr. Gibbons calls it running hot, but we would run short in that. For a long time, PSB has not sent its bids out, its contracts out for bid. And this year we have gone out to bid, and we are sharing that at this time RSC Transportation has been selected as a transportation vendor. The Office of Student Services, OSS, will be meeting with the transportation vendor to make sure that they are aware of the magnitude of the supports and services that are required by our students so that they understand fully what they have signed up for. So we hope that will put us in a better light as we go into FY25 for our budgetary concerns there.
Linus, can you just
Yes.
comment on that? Is there some risk that they don't know what they've signed up for and there's going to be additional issues or costs related to the contract?
We don't know yet, but we are doing an initial meeting with them in that. We've put it out there for them, but
But it was in the bid documents, okay.
that's what my understanding is. But we want to make sure that they understand the full magnitude of it, because they are new. They are a new vendor. They are not
Not just new to Brookline, new to everything.
yeah,
Okay, thank you.
new to providing the services. Yeah, so they're new. And also our previous, and I think Lisa, you're on. I think our previous YCN is no longer an option for us. I think they've partnered with Newton for next year as well, so we don't have that group as an option for us as well. So we can say more about that as folks may have questions about that. Jesse, you had a question?
Yeah, you're saying they've never, sorry? I know it's on, yeah. Did you mean to say that they haven't done school bus transportation before?
Yep, so this is a new.
Brand new venture for them as well.
Yeah, and as we can see, the transportation market is pretty lucrative. So folks are jumping into that to try their hand at it as such. So, but they did meet the requirements of the bid that was put forward. Okay.
Thank you.
On the horizon, new curriculum, and again, for our newer members, we have been active in literacy selection or working through a process to identify our needs. And so our district team is wrapping up our engagement with the Hill, which was the consulting group that we partnered with. And so the big news here is that as we start narrowing down the possibilities, we are again updating the committee at this juncture because we would like to have representation from the curriculum subcommittee once we get down to a final selection. And we expect that to happen later this summer, into the summer months, when we get down to actually selecting the curriculum that we're going with here. And again, the question may be, why are we entertaining this notion of a new curriculum? We understand that there's been quite a bit of research around reading and reading instruction, and the need for evidence-based and research-based instruction within our organization. And we also know that a number of our students are not doing well or advancing well. So we see this as also an opportunity to get some tighter curriculum that will help meet the needs of all of our students in that regard. On the horizon, we also have a new civics assessment. This is, again, a statewide assessment from DESE. This year, schools across the Commonwealth participated in the field test administration of the 8th grade civics assessment. I won't read through I won't read which schools did what, but the students had to complete a performance task in these particular areas, and each school within our district was assigned to one of the topical areas. So the philosophical foundations of the U.S. political system, the development of the U.S. government, the institutions of the U.S. government, rights and responsibilities of citizens, the Constitution, amendments, and Supreme Court decisions. One of the reasons why that I'm bringing this forward to you is, number one, to make you aware that we are now adding an additional MCAS assessment to us. So our students now have science, math, will now have social studies, and still the ELA component. We also have a number of our students that take the access exam as a requirement. And my purpose for preluding this with you now is that at the workshop, we are going to have a conversation around the calendar and the notion of additional holidays, Category 1 and Category 2 items that will be coming forward, or there have been some requests to add additional holidays to the calendar. I think it's important for this committee to understand that with our current slate, so principals have alerted me that with our current slate of Category 1 and Category 2 holidays as such, that they're remarking that this was the first year that they had to administer MCAS on the half days or the shortened days as well as on Fridays. And we know that very few students are going to be motivated to remain once school is dismissing as such. We're now adding an additional assessment to the calendar as well. So there's very strict competition for this 180 days that we have within the organization as well. And when we get our findings from the TFM, I'm also somewhat concerned about our time on learning aspect. So what impact that will have, once we get that impact, what impact that will have on the length of our school day and those types of things. So there's a lot of work, heavy work that's going to be coming forward, but we're going to try to nest and situate our presentations to you so that we're not taking a narrow view, but we're taking a wide angle view of what impacts the decisions that are coming forward that we have to really consider and dig into. So this is my reason for bringing this to you in the context of now we need to also think about the calendar. How do we handle requests as our population and demographics change and shift over time? So by what way do we make those types of decisions? So as a committee, we need to have that conversation.
Can I ask a question, Lina?
Sure.
Am I right in remembering Category 1 are days where we do not have school, so those would not affect the 180, but Category 2 have no homework? Or
No homework.
Okay, so that
and
affects,
assessment.
we retain the day, but we don't have the ability to do some of those other things during
Right.
the day that we might be able, that would affect MCAS and the like. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And is there a firm, I don't want to get too far, but is there a firm decision of what makes a day of low attendance that's day one?
No.
Okay.
My understanding is when Dr. Lupini pulled this together, that he and the team looked at what days the schools were currently closed and just called those category ones. So that's when school was not in session. Category two then looked at how might we limit homework and assessments during those times. So we just need to think about, given our current needs, what are our current needs, but then also by how do we then make those determinations going forward so that it feels fair and equitable to everyone. Expanding our battery of assessments. So again, as we talk about MCAS assessments and those types of things, you will recall that this year we added third grade for our M-class assessment on the literacy side of the house. And next year we will be looking at STAR assessments in grades 4 through 6 because we don't have bandwidth there for our, Jody, is this more, not progress monitoring, but what do we? Screenings for students in grades 4 through 6. So the question will be then, well, what are you doing for math in grades K through 3 right now? And we want to study and see what the results are like for grades 4 through 6 with this particular assessment, and then possibly grow that down on the math side as we see how beneficial this particular information is for us, if that's determined as a need. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Dr. Gilly, I'm wondering if curriculum might have an opportunity to take a look at what these are in slightly greater detail. Could we do that?
Absolutely.
Dr. Turner? Okay, thank you.
And with that, are there any other questions before we turn to the Spotlight on Excellence?
I have a question. Just going back to the Hill group, I don't know if there already has been a midpoint, but will the Hill group be doing a presentation at some point to school committee?
You want to come up, Jody? Thank you. I know they were contracted to do the work within, and so there's a finite amount, but Jody can speak to more specifics.
The committee will be getting a report on June 13th, but it will be presented by Michelle Herman, Senior Director of Teaching and Learning, and myself. It wasn't part of the RFP for the Hill to actually present to school committee, but you will be getting a report. I look forward to it.
Any other questions?
One more, as long as you're still up here. On the Hill, so in the scope of work initially for the Hill, it was one of the points in the deliverables was possible recommendations of curricula. But in this report and in Michelle Herman's readout to CPAC this morning, it seems like that's not on Hill's scope anymore, and that's being done without their consultation. I'm not objecting. I just want to understand what the Hill is and is not advising when it comes to specific curricular recommendations.
They are not making a specific curricular recommendations beyond Curate, which is the state review board, and Ed Reports, which is a national review board. And any program that we choose would come from one of those two sources.
So was that an explicit change in scope from the SOW?
It was once they started the work. They explained to us that that wasn't part of what they did, that they would recommend that we need them or don't need them, but they wouldn't recommend a specific program. That would be an additional cost.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Val, I can't see if you have a question or not.
Not I, no.
Okay. I keep hitting the wrong button. So with that, we will turn our attention to our Spotlight on Excellence. Since 1984, the Ernest R. Cavalier Award for Excellence in Teaching has been presented by the Brookline Education Foundation to Brookline educators in recognition of professional achievements and contribution to the public schools of Brookline. 2 awards are given annually, one to a high school educator and one to an elementary school educator. The educators receiving the awards are designated as Ernest R. Caverly Associates in recognition of their dedication to the ideals of Dr. Ernest R. Caverly, a distinguished public leader, educator, and Brookline School Superintendent from 1931 to 1964. This year's deserving recipients are Driscoll art teacher Olivia Rayette and BHS English SWS teacher Kiara Flynn Carson. We are pleased to have with us BEF Executive Director Liz Askley and Olivia with us tonight. Kiara will join us at a later date. I will now turn the mic over to Liz.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Yes, it's a pleasure to be here. Olivia Rayelt has been working in Brookline since 2015, and her impact on the Driscoll community and her students has been enormous. As an art teacher, Ms. Rayelt teaches every single student in Driscoll School every year they are there. As a result, she has a unique perspective on the students, as she is able to see them and teach them as they grow up. While with some teachers, that could just mean that hordes of essentially nameless kids come into her classroom day after day and year after year. With Ms. Rayelt, this means that she really gets to know and have insight into every one of her students. Many teachers in the school come to Olivia to get her thoughts and advice about various things, including students. Parents and teachers alike say that all of Ms. Rayel's assignments are well integrated into the curriculum and enhance whatever the students are learning. In addition to working hard every year to ensure that the Arts Equinox takes place and is a success, Ms. Rayelt goes above and beyond to be a warm and welcoming adult presence for her students. Ms. Rayelt, middle school kids can eat lunch in her art room. Students feel free to make mistakes and know that she will help them, and she is often the last teacher to leave the school in the evening. Her kindness and warmth also extend on a number of occasions to students who are having a difficult time for one reason or another. Olivia Rayelt is an exemplary teacher, person, and community member, and now she can add to this list of superlatives a Caverly winner as well. Let me introduce Olivia Rayelt.
I have to say hi to Jake, but I don't know which way to look. Val, is Jake there?
He just left. He was listening in on you.
Yeah, no, well, tell him I say hi. This is going to be round 2 for a few of you. So thank you for listening and congratulations, new school committee members. When the cavalry team entered the Driscoll art room a few weeks ago, I was confused, shocked, and very, very nauseous. Such an incredible and unexpected surprise. It is an especially supportive village that enables me to be successful and happy in my job. I could not manage working without all the people that bolster me and my teaching. I thank the Driscoll School teachers, staff, and administration who really value and understand the importance of the arts. I so appreciate their invaluable support of me and my often scatterbrained self. They are an awesome team. Collaboration is a big ingredient to who I am as a teacher. The Driscoll teachers and the art teachers across the district inspire and challenge my thinking, which betters me as an educator. And to the BEF, all educators and students are so fortunate to have you. You encourage and support us to think outside the box, to imagine something new and exciting to bring to our teaching and to our classrooms. The BEF has provided teachers with excellent individual, collaborative, department, school, and town-wide initiatives and has funded so many interdisciplinary projects in this town. Your work translates to joy in our buildings. My path as a learner is likely what led me right into a career in teaching. My elementary experiences in the mainstream classroom were often anxious ones. I traveled a very bumpy road where traditional teaching practices often did not compute for me. In the academic settings, I struggled to make sense of systems that seemed simple for my peers. Fortunately, in the arts, there was a world of excitement, discovery, and a feeling of competency and joy. Students learn Learning is full of emotions. It is present in how to learn, what to learn, and most importantly, how a student feels about learning. At one point or another, we have all been asked, what was your favorite memory in school, earliest memory, or favorite teacher? When I look back over my most poignant memories of school, the memories have either joy or anxiety attached as the emotion. The truly joyous memory in school was when I was in 5th grade and I was handed a clump of poopied, yellowed sheep's wool. I can remember the smell of a farm as well as the scent of the sheep's lanolin. The class was called Sheep to Shawl. We were taught how to card the wool using what looked like 2 dog brushes. As the bits of dried grass and poop fell away, we were ready to wash the fluffy wool. Over the weeks and then months, we chose our dyes to color our wool. We're taught how to use the spinning wheel to spin our own yarn, and then how to knit. These hands-on interdisciplinary learning experiences engaged me completely. My finished piece was a scarf that I wrapped up and gave to my mother for Christmas. My mom wore the scarf on the coldest of days, saying that it kept her whole body warm. I actually don't doubt that because it was closer to being a rug than actually a scarf. I remember putting it around my neck and talking about how itchy it was, and my mom responding, "It's not itchy on my neck." It also still smelled like a farm, but my mom responded, "I don't smell a farm." Mom was willing to cut me some slack and wear the smelly, itchy scarf to prove my success. This paints an accurate picture of my mother, my first teacher. I had no better champion. My mom's understanding of how excited I was by this project led her to rent me a spinning wheel to have in my room at home. The teacher and her helped me realize that if I worked the spinning wheel while she read my required school reading out loud, my comprehension was nearly perfect. My parents recognized that I was a capable student, given to diving deep into areas of interest and processes that allowed me to control the pace and scope, to imagine more than one solution. This was important to my self-esteem. Both my parents recognized that the arts made me feel successful and reflect on how and what I had learned. With learning not coming easily to me in most academic subjects, I often felt anxious and inadequate. In 3rd grade, my classroom teacher, Mrs. Frick Richards, discovered that I really couldn't read. Through 1st and 2nd grade, I'd worked really hard to fake it and became really, really good at it. I learned how to memorize Mac and Tab books by listening to neighboring kids read them aloud. There was clearly no Fountas and Pinnell or BAS testing back then. Mrs. Frick Richards explained to my parents that I had very early emerging reading strategies, but that was about it. This was the beginning of a very long journey for my parents and myself to discover what kind of learner I was. The art room, the wood shop, and the athletic fields became my sanctuaries at school. When I was drawing, painting, or sculpting, I felt challenged but relaxed. Art provided me with a means of self-expression where I could communicate thoughts and feelings that were difficult to articulate verbally or in writing. The arts allowed me to escape from the challenges of the classroom curriculum expectations and to immerse myself in a world where I felt capable and in control. Moreover, art and athletics offered me a sense of validation and acceptance from my peers. Thank goodness for this, because as we know, self-esteem and confidence is everything. I've always loved the joy of discovery for myself. And early in my life, I realized that children experience discovery constantly as they explore their world. Working with children was a natural path for me. When I was still a child myself, I was always drawn towards babies and toddlers. My first babysitting job was when I was 11. For years, I was clear that I wanted to grow up and have 5 children of my own. Luckily for my husband, Bill, I outgrew that idea, and my desire to surround myself with children morphed from having a large family to having classrooms surrounded by students. My parents were my biggest cheerleaders throughout my schooling, and as I was a developing artist and athlete, they encouraged me to consider applying to art school as well as liberal arts schools when it was time for college. I was certain that becoming an elementary school teacher was what I wanted to become, so I went to liberal arts school, majored in art, and then went on to receive a master's in teaching. My first job was a 2nd grade classroom teacher. I was hired in a school that was committed to creating collaborative interdisciplinary lessons for all grades. Our teacher meetings were spent pooling our resources and talents to develop thematic units such as the one on Boston Harbor. 1st and 2nd grade teachers worked alongside the theater, art, music, and gym teachers. The students acted in a play about sea creatures that inhabited the harbor. Students wrote letters to legislators to advocate for cleaner water. We participated in a beach cleanup in Revere, and for the culmination of their social studies, we turned We turned an area of the school into a vibrant harbor with three-dimensional lighthouses, boats, and nautical flags. The students had constructed papier-mâché animals showing the devastating impacts of an oil spill. After the 8 years of being a first and second grade teacher, I was fortunate to be able to hit the professional pause button for 2 years to have the greatest joys of my life, my daughters Eleanor and Grace. By stepping away from the classroom during that time, I was able to pinpoint what kept my engine running as an educator. The giant 3D beehive when we studied communities and social studies, or the woven hut made from cardboard strips when we studied the culture of the Zulu peoples. My students could crawl inside and let their imaginations wander. These projects were what brought me and my students immense joy. The creeping pressure of meeting academic benchmarks for my 6- and 7-year-old students was challenging what I love the most about teaching. In 2006, I returned to the classroom as an art teacher, and it was the right decision for me. Teaching art fulfills my own creative needs. Watching the imagination of my students unfold so naturally with a paintbrush or a pile of torn paper is truly the best. Each time a student exclaims, "Mrs. Rayolt, did you know that when you mix yellow and blue, you can make green?" It is exciting. Being part of so many exciting discoveries is truly the best. Kindergarten Ella said out loud to her table group, "Painting makes me feel amazing." And yet another kindergarten student screamed, "I hate this stupid rabbit," and tossed his artwork to the floor after his Sharpie marker took an unexpected turn. Being able to then explore the various solutions with a student where they can make a mistake into something artistically meaningful is truly the best. The times are numerous over my 17-year career as teaching art where I've heard, "You know what, Mrs. Rayolt? I'm going to be an art teacher when I grow up." One of my former students was shocked to hear that I actually get money to do my job on top of it being, from their eyes, so fun. Students love, crave, and need this creative hands-on expression as well as in music, dance, and theater. Recently, a 6th grader shuffled out of the art room with his peers, mumbled to his friends, "I just don't understand why we have art just once a week. It doesn't make any sense." I'm asked this very significant question by my kindergarten through 8th grade students regularly. So my journey as a teacher continues. I come to school every day knowing that having the arts in our schools is critical for our students, that the arts boost self-confidence and reduce stress. Creating allows students to learn life lessons on failure, perseverance, resilience, and rigor. The creative process exercises students' critical thinking and enhances communication skills. The arts encourage civic engagement, promote empathy, and cultural awareness. The arts enrich the educational experiences of all students, no matter what their learning style is, as they prepare to succeed in an ever-changing world. I'm grateful for the many villages I have been part of during my teaching career. Teachers succeed when a vibrant village works together, where children gain confidence, develop the skills to flourish, and to be able to realize their hopes and dreams. I look forward to being a student, a novice, a beginner this summer. Beyond the unbelievable Cavalier Award, I have also been given a BEF grant. I have the opportunity to travel with my librarian colleague, Ann Reed, to Costa Rica this summer to start planning and researching for Driscoll's 2024-2025 Year of the Turtle. The trip will allow us to participate in sea turtle research and learn from those who have devoted their careers to protecting and understanding these amazing animals. Our goal is to share our gained knowledge and excitement by bringing endangered baby freshwater turtles into the library at Driscoll through the Zoo New England Turtle Conservation Program. The Zoo New England Hatch Program is referred to as a Head Start program for baby turtles. Students will become researchers and become part of the local conservation efforts. We plan to create interdisciplinary experiences at Driscoll School for our students where they will study turtles up close and, of course, create meaningful artwork inspired by these creatures. And in September, I will come to school fully charged, all in, ready for the next chapter of my teaching journey. Thank you.
Are there any members of the school committee who would like to add remarks or questions?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yeah, I just want to say, the piece we missed tonight were all the pictures of the artwork. So I just want people to know that not only did Olivia give a great speech, but you also provided samples, lots of samples of the students' artwork that you inspired in them, and it was fabulous. So
I heard it landed quite well with that piece, and I intended it obviously to tell the amazing picture of my students, but also to distract a little bit from the speech. And it sounded like both of those goals were achieved.
thank you. That was so special. Thank you.
Anyone else from the school committee? Mariah?
Olivia, I just want to say that was beautiful. It was really touching, and I really am and just to tie a couple of conversations together, some of what you said about when students learn and grow the most, both in your own experience and the students you see experience, and our discussion right beforehand about how we spend our time and new testing. And this really brings me sort of, these are two opposite perspectives of how we should be spending our time and what is most impactful for students. And I just want to say thank you for just giving a beautiful illustration of what can be the most impactful, meaningful moment in students' lives. Appreciate it.
So, Andy, can I go?
Yes, Val.
'Cause I'm gonna cry if I don't go quickly. So I luckily have some really personal experience with Olivia, finishing 9 years. I'm gonna say with her as a teacher for my son, but it's really more of a 360-degree caring of my son. And much like how art saved might be a dramatic word, Olivia, but changed your trajectory. It has changed his, and you have changed his. There's nobody else in the world, I'm convinced, who would have him able to take a Z-block health class to ensure that he's taking 2 art classes in the high school in the fall. So thank you for that. Thank you for connecting him to all of the art resources and supporting him in every way outside of art as a human being. We love you and our family and really appreciate you in Brookline. Thank you.
Talk about cheerleaders now. That's my biggest.
And Carolyn? Yeah.
Thank you, Olivia. That was an amazing speech, and congratulations. This is such a huge honor. It's so exciting as a parent in the district to watch every year who gets this highest award. So amazing. And I've never met you before, but obviously from your speech and what I'm hearing, you were awesome. I really loved a lot of what you said. I appreciate your personal story and talking about how you found traditional systems in school confusing and not engaging. And I know this committee and the school department has worked on the strategic plan, and there's been some discussion about in the future talking about what a PSB graduate looks like. So I feel like there were kernels in there that are really important for us all to think about as we think about our students and our children, about engaging and what success means and validation. So thank you so much, and congratulations.
Yes, thank you for telling us your inspiring story as a student and an educator. You've touched my life as well through the art made by your students. I live surrounded by folks from Driscoll. Yeah. Oh, Jesse, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand up.
Thank you for all your remarks. It really was so heartfelt. And I've already written a note to myself, how soon can I get to see your area at Driscoll once the turtles are there and as things are moving along? I can't wait. I mean, and to sort of step one further than what maybe Carolyn said as well, and Mariah, is that when things get tough on the academic side, coming to your classroom must be a great miracle for the students who come through together with you. And it's something we really need to pay attention to and to keep as foremost at our mind as the academic side. So thank you for bringing such a spotlight to it. Yes.
Usually go to the bathroom at the nurse.
There you go.
And we talk a lot about data.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Urielt, the Public Schools of Brookline Spotlight on Excellence. is awarded to Olivia Rayout, the 2024 BEF Cavalry Award winner, with gratitude and appreciation of your professional achievements, contributions to the public schools of Brookline, and exemplifying the very highest standards of teaching each and every day. Congratulations.
Okay. Okay. Back to the studio.
All right, so that brings us to public comment. Tonight we have, I think, one speaker signed up, Ms. Carrie Goldberg. So if Ms. Goldberg, you're on Zoom, we can promote you now. Great.
Great. Okay. Great. There we go. Can you hear me okay?
We can. Welcome, and the floor is yours for 3 minutes.
Great, thank you. So that really was a beautiful speech, Ms. Rayalt. I am a longtime Brookline parent, and I've also been a journalist for decades, including at the New York Times, the Boston Globe, Bloomberg News, and in case my voice sounds familiar, WBUR for about a decade. But I'm not an investigative type reporter. However, on October 16th, I filed the first public records request of my career, asking for emails related to the superintendent's initial message about October 7th, which you may recall upset many students, parents, school staff, and others in the community. On October 30th, I got a confirmation of my request. And ever since then, every couple of weeks, I've sent very courteous emails to people in the administration asking for my request to be fulfilled. Sometimes I get answers, sometimes I don't. But what I haven't gotten over the last 7 months is the actual emails that the law says I'm entitled to. And I'm speaking about this to you now because transparency was a major theme in the campaigns that led to the 3 newly elected members on this committee. And I'd like to say, this could be a really good test case for whether the school committee will, in fact, further greater transparency. I don't expect you to get involved in this specific case, but I'm hoping that you can put the word out very clearly to the administration and to the town council that they are expected to obey the law when they get public records requests and on all matters of public process, of course. And I'd just like to add, Superintendent Guillory put out a corrective after that first message, and I really respected that. But I think that initial misstep needs some sunlight because it was a big one. And the community members who were so upset by it need to know how it came about. So I just want to thank you all for your service. And I want to let you know, I've been here a long time. I'm feeling more hopeful about the direction of Brookline public education than I have for about a decade. So wishing you all Godspeed. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Goldberg. Since this is a new committee tonight, it might be worth mentioning that our policy as a committee is not to respond during the meeting to public comments that we receive. But this certainly doesn't mean that we're not listening very attentively and sort of thinking about it at the time and later as well. Just wanted to say that because we have a new committee tonight. All right, thank you very much. So this brings us to our presentations and discussions of current issues. We first have an hour devoted to educational equity, reimagining a plan forward. So Claire, the floor is all yours. For those watching at home, we're just trying to work out a laptop connection so the presentation can start.
Thank you. So good evening. We're Claire Galloway Jones. I am the Executive Director of Educational Equity. Really excited to be here. And of course, I was going to jump right in, but after listening to Ms. Rael, it just brought me back to some memories of when I taught second grade at the John Marshall School. She talked about making mistakes, and there was a favorite story of mine. It was part of our anthology, Regina's Big Mistake, where Regina was a little girl who had to draw a rainforest, and this rainforest was not coming out right, but it was always the best story, really, of the year. So she's gone now, but I really appreciated that because I love teaching second grade. It just made me think of all the special things that come into play. And I took a couple of notes. I so appreciated her talking about interdisciplinary practice, providing students with varying modalities and access to content. So I think oftentimes we forget the important pieces of the work that we have to do. And art is a big part of that, and the skills that students actually use when they're participating in varying content. So, again, really excited to be here. You can introduce yourself as well.
Hi, I'm Christy Hernandez, Assistant Director of Educational Equity. I'm very happy to be here with you all tonight and share a little bit about our office's work and what we're going to be doing moving forward.
So, Christy and I will be popping back and forth. So, Linus, could you move forward? All righty. So for tonight's presentation, I am going to close this because I'm getting distracted. It's really about redefining the Office of Educational Equity, outlining a path forward through collaboration, and unpacking findings and recommendations. Linus, could you actually refresh yours? Thank you so much. Alrighty. So the goals for this year, this was our preliminary plan, listening and building trust, oh my goodness, increase PSB's data collection measures for educators, staff, and families. We really wanted to focus on amending current data collection measures to be culturally relevant and equitable. All of this to provide accurate, actionable data on the current state of our school system and belongingness from every angle. Acknowledge and name areas of strength and improvement. Establish a plan for a portrait of a culturally competent, responsive school district and educator. Continue to build upon a plan for capacity building and establishing consistent communication. So the Public Schools of Brookline vision and goals. Our vision, Brookline provides every student with an extraordinary education through enriching learning experiences. We just heard that from Ms. Rael. And supportive communities so that they may develop to their fullest potential. And these are our goals: our joy in learning, excellence in teaching, culture of collaboration, celebration of difference, commitment to equity, and ethic of wellness. We also want to highlight the DESE vision, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. I think what's really important is for us to understand the three bullets that are here, but I do want to highlight DESE's vision. The goal of this work is to support students to thrive by creating affirming environments where students feel seen, engage in deeper learning, and are held to a high expectations with targeted support. To realize this vision, educators must have the mindset, knowledge, and capacity to serve all students well, particularly students from historically underserved groups and communities. So all students are known and valued. Learning experiences are relevant, real-world, and interactive. Individualized supports enable students to excel at a grade level or beyond. So in this work, we were really trying to figure out how can we really ground it. And so for us, grounding educational equity, we really wanted to highlight MASC's educational equity policy. I actually have to open up because I can't see that far, and the font's a little small. Educational equity for the purpose of this policy is defined as providing all students a reasonably practicable the high-quality instruction and support they need to reach and exceed a common standard. To achieve educational equity, the district will commit to systemically, when appropriate, use district-wide and individual school-level data disaggregated by race, ethnicity, gender identity, national origin, language, special education, socioeconomic status, and mobility to inform district decision-making. Raise the achievement of all students, graduate all students ready to succeed in a diverse local, national, and global community. In order to reach the goal of educational equity as reasonably practicable, for each and every student, the district shall, 1, provide every student with access to high-quality curriculum support and other educational resources. 2, seek to promote educational equity as a priority in professional development. And 3, endeavor to create schools with a welcoming and inclusive culture and environment. Provide multiple pathways to success in order to meet the needs of the diverse student body and actively encourage support and expect high academic achievement for each student. And in this particular slide, what we're really trying to highlight are the takeaways and the alignment. High expectations, embracing, valuing differences, and targeted supportive community. This is really the through line here. So all of these three buckets that we are pulling from the PSB vision as well as DESE's vision, understanding what the MASC, I know it's not our particular policy, but I think it's a really good understanding of what educational equity is. Pulling all of those three things together really does outline what a culturally competent and responsive community is. A community that is, I still can't see, a community that is really rooted in equity, a through line across the board. So this also leads us into culturally responsive practice. Culturally responsive practice, the use of this term is specific and deliberate and requires that education leaders understand and simultaneously attend to a strong foundation of cultural understanding, again, making sure that the equity is truly the foundation of our work. The academic success of all students, we know that all students can learn if we give them the proper proper access, cultivating and deepening the cultural competence of themselves and the adults they lead, the cultivation of socio-political consciousness. So in this slide, we're talking about our findings, wins, and our next steps. So as we go through the rest of the presentation, I want us to be thinking that PSB and OE have strong relationships and collaborations. PSB leaders are actively participating in professional development that help frame and lead equitable work. PSB teachers are actively participating in professional development that impacts equitable practice. With all of that, we know this is a journey and that we have more work to do, specifically as we think about FY25. So established relationships. We are really fortunate that we have some professional organizations that we partner with as well as community partners. We have the Massachusetts Partnership for Diversity in Education, which if you've been to some of the subcommittee meetings, you've heard me talk about this, MPDE. This is a relationship that Brookline has partnered with for some time. We have Mass already, Massachusetts Racial Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. This is a leadership practice network. We are in the group foundations too. This is, again, this is the Mass Superintendents. And then we have SEED, which is training that Brookline has been part of for some time now. That's been supported by the BEF. We have 4 cohorts that are happening now, so with the co-facilitation, actively activating equity. Again, 4 cohorts. We have the BHS cohort, and then we have 3 cohorts that are K through 8. Then we have our Brookline Educators for Educational Diversity, that's BEAD, the Teachers Lounge, which is a new partnership for us, Brookline Asian American Family Network, BAFN, and the Coalition for Anti-Racism in Education Care. So we have been really busy this year. We've attended a lot of webinars, symposiums, and conferences. This is just a snapshot. We've actually attended a lot more. Again, just because it's so far, I'm going to open up my screen. So you can just be patient for just one moment. So you'll see here we've attended at least 50-plus collaborative meetings with community partners and identity-based groups. So when we say collaborative meetings, we're talking about Office of Educational Equity, Office of Teaching and Learning, as well as the Office of Student Services. We've met at the high school with several groups. We've met here in our offices here at Central Office. We've done a lot of Zoom meetings during the day as well as in the evening. We've had community listening sessions with Jewish and Israeli caregivers, as well as Muslim, Arab, and Persian caregivers. Some of this is just a snapshot of some of our symposiums and conferences. Just recently participated in the Brandeis Day of Learning. This is Brandeis University's presidential initiative to counter anti-Semitism in higher education. It was a very unique experience for us to be at Brandeis. It was really put together for a lot of independent schools, but there were several public school districts there. Brookline was there, Newton was there, I believe Lexington was there, and Acton Boxborough as well. Training for families for our LGBTQ plus Brookline students, race and equity in Brookline, summit about the national strategy to counter anti-Semitism in K through 12 schools, concerned about anti-Semitism in Brookline, as we had, I believe, Rebecca, I'm sorry about the name, I think it's Shaglis, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Racial Justice Action Committee of First Parish in Brookline, I've met with them several times. We've been on webinars with the U.S. Department of Education multiple times throughout the year, the Office of Civil Rights, and the Convening on Racial Equity, the Brookline for Racial Justice and Equity, the BRJE. And then what we thought we would do is try to go through some of the presentation with our goals and really trying to tie the work that we're doing with the goals that we have for this year, and also really highlighting some of the work that we're going to be doing next year. So we look at Goal 1, teaching and learning. Ines, if you could move the slide. OEE school residencies. This was something that was really passionate for myself and Christy this year, that we really wanted to figure out a way to get into schools and really pull some anecdotal data. We knew that we hoped to be doing instructional rounds, but we knew this year was going to be a little bit different, as we had a brand new team with myself and Christy being brand new to OEE, as well as partnering with Office of Teaching and Learning, as well as OSS, that we thought we would do residencies. Initially, we were looking to do 5 days. It looked like we were doing this year. Got very busy, so we were doing 3 days. So the purpose of the residency is really is very similar to instructional rounds. I know some folks around the table understand what that is, where we have an intentional focus on observation and lived experience over time in all aspects of the school. So classrooms, transitioning time, the unstructured times, we're talking recess, cafeteria time, and just hallway transitioning, and attending meetings with staff. So we had opportunities to attend CST meetings and other team meetings as well. We have completed 6 of 3-day residencies at BEEP, Putterham and Lynch, BHS, Lawrence, Driscoll, and FRR. These are some of the trends and findings that we have. So consistent, we really found that we had strong, clear dedication of staff and faculty, again, by the person who was just honored. You can hear that in everything that she shared today. Effective questioning, student engagement, emphasis on analytical strategies, and writing instruction. Now, we did find some variability as well, instructional best practices that provide access to all students. So differentiation, visual aids, manipulatives, presenting information in a multimodal ways, and behavior management. And then, so for goal number 2, we have community and connections. I'm going to pass it on.
I thought it was the third one.
Are you?
I can do this.
Oh, that's me. I apologize. So we have our online reporting systems. I didn't look at my notes. I apologize. So if you just go back one, community and connections, develop and implement a cultural responsive community engagement plan to foster connections among caregivers, schools, the district, and the community. This was really important to us. I mean, we've had a really tough year. We've been really honest about that. It hasn't been easy. So this goal has been really important to us. And we've been really trying, in all of those meetings that we were having with community members, we knew that we needed to respond and try to figure out what we could do so folks could actually reach out to us and share their experiences. Linus, thank you. So in this slide, you'll see that we had new online forms for students, caregivers, and employees to share experiences and suggestions. So we have the bullying and discrimination incident reports, options to report anonymously, also to report with the choice to who will receive the report. We have some reports where you can just directly send it to the Office of Educational Equity. All of the bullying and harassment reports actually go to all the school administrators, but they also are reported to our office as well as the Office of Student Services. And also trying to really combat the fear of retaliation. So that was so important to make sure that some of these forms really, there's a field in there that you can be anonymous, because sometimes that's why people don't report, because they're actually thinking that there will be some form of retaliation.
And so next, we're going to talk about our efforts that support goal number 3, which surrounds climate and culture. So one of the things that we're really proud of is that our office, in collaboration with OSS, specifically Dr. Matt Dubois, we have already instituted the first staff and family climate surveys that have gone out district-wide since 2019. These surveys are a combination of Likert scale questions as well as optional open response questions. Likert scale being you rate on a scale of strongly agree, agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree. And the outcome, every question was designed with a specific outcome in mind, which is clear, actionable feedback that central office and school leaders can act on quickly and make the changes that our practitioners, that our families are telling us that they want to see. So the staff climate survey measures the following elements that you see: school belonging, cultural awareness and action, district climate, school climate, staff administrator relationships, professional learning, and teaching all students. We wanted it to be really comprehensive. For the family survey, it measures school and district climate, family engagement, and family/school relationships, as well as school support and fit. Here we've pulled a couple example questions from the staff climate and culture survey so you can have a feel of what's being asked and the areas that are being covered. So a couple of the Likert scale questions are, number 1, our school and staff have the resources and knowledge to effectively teach diverse learners, e.g. students who are English language learners, students with IEP/504s, students with social emotional needs, etc. The second, I feel I can respond to incidents that require disciplinary action effectively. The third, the feedback I receive on my work is useful and actionable. And the fourth, I know who to go to for support when an issue related to diversity arises. 2 sample open response questions are, what can school and district leaders do better to support positive relationships with educators? And the second is, what do you need to serve all students effectively? I think these questions give an idea of the breadth and depth of the survey, and that we really want this to function and to create a channel by which the voices of our educators and practitioners who are with our kids every day reach the top. We can go to the next one. Thank you. These are a couple examples of questions that are pulled from the Family Climate and Culture Survey. So first, the Likert scale ones. My student's school is welcoming to parents and guardians. Number 2, I know who to contact at my student's school if they're experiencing challenges. Number 3, my student's school effectively handles issues related to bullying. And 2 sample open response questions are, number 1, what is your student's school doing well to support positive family-school relationships? And what can your student's school do better to support positive family and school relationships? And we can go to the next. Thank you. So I feel like when we talk about the data that we're collecting, it feels like it leads back to this question of, so what are we going to do with it? What's going to happen with this data? And there's a few things we wanted to highlight. So first, it's that this directly supports the strategic plan goal 3, which under it, one of the bullets is that we administer a baseline survey and create action plans surrounding the results. So this fills that need. And the 2 main things that we want to do with this data are, number 1, it's to inform individual school improvement plans and thus support and structure the work of principals and school leadership. This data will be shared with them. Their building specific data will be shared with them. And then number 2, to inform central office's work and action plans with this new climate and culture survey. The data that comes from it is something that will be shared amongst all departments here. We all take a lot of data separately, but I think this fills that gap of something that we all review together to ensure alignment across departments, to support that collaboration across departments, and to be responsive to the needs of our practitioners, school administrators, and families whose responses make up the data.
All right, so we're going to move on to goal number 4, management and capacity building. Develop resource management and capacity building systems that will ensure educational organizational goals are accomplished timely and with transparency. So here I wanted to highlight the Public Schools of Brookline Policy Manual, Section G, in the personnel section. It's number 2, recruitment, selection, and staffing equity policy. Staff recruitment and retention, this was voted on April 27th, 2023. The Public Schools of Brookline recognize that for the sake of student achievement, community, and belonging, the demographic makeup of the educator workforce should broadly reflect that of the student body. Accordingly, PSB seeks to recruit and retain educators from groups that are currently underrepresented relative to the local community served by PSB. So this recruitment will be led collaboratively by the Office of Human Resources and the Office of Educational Equity. So it's recruitment, retention, and as we think about retention, it's mentoring, community building, supervision, evaluation, and outcome measurement. So here we have the recruitment and retention. These are just some of the partnerships that we have. We think about diversity and recruiting efforts, partnership with Mass Partnership for Diversity Education. They have a career fair and a toolkit that we have access to as members. Again, this is a membership that Brookline's had for some time. I've been a member in former districts as well, but this has been a really great partnership where when they go off to a career fair, we're able to actually attach and make sure that all of our postings go with them. So as a representative of Brookline and MPDE, I attended the Harvard Career Fair, and I was able to bring our positions there. Our talent acquisition person was able to create a nice little one flyer with a QR code. So although I was there representing the organization of MPDE, I was also representing Brookline at the same time, highlighting the positions that we have available for their diversity career fair. We have the Teachers Lounge, which is a new partnership for us. I'm really excited about that. The Teachers Lounge really focuses on trying to ensure that teachers of diverse backgrounds stay in the field. We know that within the first 5 years, many people leave the field. And for folks who are moving into districts where they don't see many people like themselves, often don't have a sense of belonging, they don't stay in those districts. And as we're really working, if we think about the policy, we want to make sure that we're reflective of our population. It's really important for us to partner with organizations who are intentional about that work. We have our in-house organization, Brookline Educators for Educator Diversity, BEAD. We just had a recruitment fair in May 2024, which was really awesome. That was, you'll see a couple of photos in a moment, that was held at 22 Tappan. They're a really great group of educators who've been working here in Brookline long before I got here, who are really committed to diversifying staff, but also really thinking about retention as well, and really making sure that they can support their colleagues who are here. So as we also think about OEE, we created an implicit bias tool to be used by interview committees. We have our diversity and retention efforts. Again, our Massachusetts Partnership for Diversity and Education. They have a Building Bridges Conference every year. It's an amazing conference that's really great for, a lot of times, we'll have a school district that may have an assistant superintendent of human resources. They attend. Oftentimes, we have our finance deputy superintendents who attend those meetings as well in that conference, just to learn more. What are we doing about hiring and retention? And what are we thinking? Oftentimes spend a great deal of time on some of the systemic issues that really impact the hiring and retention of diverse staff. Again, the Teachers Lounge, this partnership we're really excited about. We just launched this. It's the CLOC program, the Classroom Leaders of Color Fellowship, where we have asked our principals and coordinators to recommend teachers. This is a program that's specifically for teachers, really in the first 3 years of their teaching, where they are followed for 2 years. They're part of this program where they get mentorship. They are able to go and do observations in other districts. It's free to us for them to participate. The only cost is that we would have to require a sub 1 day. We are looking to have 6. Right now, we have 3 people who've been recommended. We're looking for 6 to have a cohort of 6. And again, the cost is a 1-day sub monthly. And then again, we have BEAD organization. We held a retention event at Golden Temple, which was really, it's an event about fellowship and really having an opportunity for folks to get together, share their narratives, but really to kind of socialize and support one another in that way. We also have the feedback forms that we've talked about, professional development, and we are in the process of trying to develop our BIPOC mentor program. And here's just a snapshot from, this is the career fair the MPDE held. They hold a career fair every year, looking like we're going to have maybe a second one, but this was in Easton back in March. And we have Jamie Yadoff there, Michelle Herman, and Melvin Merlos from HR who attended. It was a great day. Susan was there for a short time as well, brought the brochures and all the swag, her and Jamie. We took that picture right after you left. I'm so sorry, Susan. And then we had B, this is our diversity recruitment event. I think what's really special about this, this was an event that was sponsored by MECO and BEAD. And what was really interesting is that you'll see, this is kind of blurry, but you'll have the deck outdoors where you can really see. There were a couple of students that participated, and Janin Wang reached out to me through her guidance counselor, Rich Gorman, and they've been trying to get in touch with me for like 2 months, and we were going back and forth trying to set up time to get together. But part of her ask was, what can I do? She said, I've only had one teacher of color since I've been here. She's a high school student. She said, what can I do to partner with OEE? Are you doing anything around hiring and retention? Which I thought, well, wow, that's just so profound from a high school student. And I said, well, we're actually having an event coming up. And she said, well, can I come and volunteer? I said, yes, but only if you come and bring a friend. And she did, as well as would you say a few words. And so it was just a really nice event. It was last minute. We kind of threw it together, and it did come. What was beautiful is that we had faculty that came. We had so the combination of teachers and building administrators that came. We've had, I think, 3 connections that were made from that. I think FRR was able to connect with a student. We had all of our interns who were there. I think in the top right, you can see we have a bunch of our interns who were already in the district that make connections with other principals throughout the district. So I would say that it was a success. If they hadn't done, BEAD hadn't done this event in the last couple of years with COVID and things like that and kind of getting back. So it was great to relaunch this.
And Claire, was this like a hiring fair where candidates were actually being interviewed, or was it?
They were not being
informational?
interviewed, but that's the next step. So our hope is that, we've done it this year. Again, this is the first time they've done it, I think, in 3 years. So we're hoping that next year we'll have a little bit more time. And we're finding that actually interviewing folks on the spot is great. I will say what's tough is that we are slow to post, so we didn't have a whole lot of positions. So,
Okay.
I mean, I don't think that's, unique to right now. That's been unique to Brookline for some time. So I think it's just trying to figure out what can we do so that we have enough positions to actually show folks. It was, I will tell you, a beautiful day. We had a lot more people registered and less people showed up. And I think people said, well, I sent you my information. You have my resume. Today's the first day that's like 72, and I'm going to do something else. So, but it was a well turned out event. And this is another beautiful event. This is the retention event at Golden Temple in March. And you can see there were tons of people there. I think we had 43 people that attended. So it was really nice. Folks felt like, this was something that they really needed. It's been a tough year. School's just hard. We know that. Many of us are educators in this room. By the time you get to March, you're like, ugh. I did a little stint in independent school. I left public school for a little while, and my first year, I had to give up my April and February vacation. I had 2 weeks in March. It was the best 2 weeks in March I've ever had in my life because I didn't realize what 2 weeks together could actually mean because I had never experienced it as an educator. So March is a time that you need something, and this was just a really good time. I'm going to put Christy on the spot here. She met a family member at that event. Come talk about it just for a second. Every now and then you got to have a fun fact.
So basically, I have two last names. My mom's last name is Villaverde, which Hernandez, okay, you're going to find a million of them, but Villaverde is a little bit more rare. And Viri Hawkins Villaverde from Driscoll is also Cuban and from Miami as well. And I was like, could it be that we're family? And we talked about it. She pulled up pictures that her dad had made of his family tree with names who are all the names of my own family members. So it was just so crazy. I've never met a Cuban person here, and then in all places, Golden Temple and Brookline, find a family member.
4 years at BC, 8 years in Boston Public Schools, and she meets a family member here. She's only been here
It was
since
so
November.
great.
So again, fun facts are always fun. And so, but with that, they shared that it happened right on the spot. It was just a beautiful culmination to the event. And then we have the OEE educator and staff feedback form. I'm going to pass it back over to Christy.
So we wanted to revisit the educator and staff feedback form, which was the earliest iteration of a data collection form that we sent out. We collected data on this form from December 2023 to January 2024. And it was meant to fill that need for data to structure our action plan while we were getting the staff and family climate surveys off the ground. So what did this data lead to? I'm really excited to highlight this part. The data from this form filled out by educators, staff members, led to the comprehensive equity cycle at FRR that I've been doing and am continuing to do, to the development of a pilot program to train staff in 10 competencies of equity, which we're going to present to you a little bit later. This pilot program is going to be piloted at FRR, Lawrence, and Pierce, and we're so excited for those partnerships. It also led to the creation of video modules, written templates, and extensive resources for educators. So based off of the feedback we received on that form and many of the common scenarios that teachers were brave enough to say, I don't know how to handle this incident that's occurring in the classroom, I was able to film multiple video series with video exemplars of how I would respond to those incidents to provide teachers with real life examples, not just like a little script, but to see somebody doing it that they can always refer back to. That it lives there in the Google Drive in a place that is accessible to all PSV staff right now. And it also led to whole staff professional development sessions, which I've given at FRR and Lawrence. Next. And then just to shed a little bit more light on the equity cycle that has been happening at FRR, this cycle has really centered on meeting with administrators, facilitating and supporting equity and belonging work with educators at grade level meetings. And I think that equity and belonging work, it is centered around students, but it's also centered around staff because we know that adults who do not experience belongingness, it's very hard for them to create environments of belongingness for children. So we've been able to do that work with both of those populations. I've supported collaborative all middle school work, observed instruction, and provided targeted coaching. Next. Okay, and this part, I'm so excited to present this part. I'm really proud of this. Based off of all the data that we've been able to collect. This is the theory of change and action plan for 2024-2025 that will guide my work for the better part of next year. This was prepared with Ruiz Clark, who is a doctoral candidate at Harvard GSC. He was also the intern to Superintendent Guillory, and an all-around brilliant person. And I really want to highlight that what you're about to see isn't just my work. It is the work of so many people that have supported this. It's been done with the feedback and the invaluable input of Dr. Guillory, Claire, Gabe McCormick, Dr. Jody, Dr. Matubois, and Michelle Herman. And I really want to highlight that. And I think this is a beautiful example of a cross-departmental collaboration. Okay, so the basis of the work for next year, and this is what I was talking about when I said that this will form the pilot program that will start at FRR, Lawrence, and Pierce. The idea, this whole thing is built on this idea of train the trainer and thus build capacity. So these 3 schools will have an equity team, which here it's listed as it will comprise the principal, the vice principal, the guidance counselor, and the equity leads, specifically because these are typically the staff members that facilitate a lot of the team meetings that occur in middle school, which is where we'll be concentrating this pilot program. Next. And the idea is that I will be training those equity teams who will then go on to train their grade level teams, so 6th, 7th, and 8th. I will be training these equity teams on these, if we could just click one more time. The idea is that I'll be training these equity teams on these 10 competencies of equity, which are listed there. So restorative justice circles, both community building circles, as well as addressing harm circles, high expectations, courageous conversations, story of self, EL strategies, internalized biases, behavioral support, peer observations, partnering with families, and empathy interviews. And I think what's so beautiful about these competencies is they come directly from the extensive feedback of educators, administrators, directly from students, and from families as well. And these are the 10 competencies that teachers have named. If I had strong training in these things, I would feel very confident in my ability to provide culturally proficient and relevant, excellent instruction to all students. And that students have named as, if my teachers knew how to do these things, I would feel a heightened sense of belonging in class. We can still stay on that, thank you. So the idea is that I will develop toolkits, or rather modules, that can be completed in 45 minutes each. So a CPT period designed to be able to be completed during the day, keeping in mind that our teachers work so hard and we don't want to give them anything else to do that can't be done in their day already. So each competency will have a 45-minute training module that will have video exemplars and every single tool and resource that a teacher would need to do this competency with excellence in their classroom. And that those materials, the idea here is that we're creating a brand new system where these materials will live on the Google Drive, accessible to all PSB staff, and will hopefully outlast us all, so we actually put in place things that last beyond our 10 years here and with an eye towards the future. And I think that to me is really important, that capacity building element. And we could go to the next slide. And just to give you an idea of how this works, also with the understanding that in partnering with these 3 schools, some of this may look a little bit different based off of each school's needs, but the general plan that we have to govern this work, taking us through March 2025, is that by fall 2024, I will have completed the creation of the first 5 toolkits, and equity teams, so those principal, vice principal, guidance counselor, equity leads, will be trained in restorative justice circles 1.0. We thought that was the most important module to start off the year. Based a lot on all the events that we've seen happen this year, I think it's really important to have our practitioners have uniform training across all schools. And how do we handle it when these things come up? How are we creating environments where students are safe to talk about these things in class? So after that, winter 2025, the idea is that equity teams will be trained in 4 of the 5 toolkits, and that equity teams have then implemented 3 of these 5 toolkits at their schools. So equity teams will have trained the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade teams during their CPT meetings in RJ circles, high expectations, and courageous conversations by that point. And then looking forward to spring 2025, the idea is that equity teams will be trained in all the first 5 toolkits, as well as internalized biases. And equity teams will have implemented all 5 toolkits at their schools, the ones that are listed below. And at that point, it serves as a checkpoint to decide based with school leadership, okay, so what are we doing now? Are we continuing forward with the next 5 blocks or next 5 modules of this cycle? Or are we focusing on the previous 5 blocks, deep diving them, and in year 2 doing the next 5 modules? So the plan is structured enough to be helpful, but hopefully flexible enough to account for the fact that each school has different needs. And I just wanted to say, I forgot this part in the beginning, but I'm really grateful also to Dr. Guillory, who were able to present this today with his support, and I want to recognize that. Thank you.
So thank you, Christy. Christy has worked incredibly hard. I just want to say Ruiz, Dr. Guillory's intern, was amazing. He did so much work with us. He was a huge, huge, huge asset and support and mentoring Christy. I always say we're an office, but we're a 2-person team, and it's pretty hard to get all this work done. We were hoping that we'll be able to expand the team at some point going forward, but he was a huge help. I mean, free labor, but incredibly bright and just really willing to develop his sleeves and dig in and support all of our work. I know earlier you heard from Dr. Jody. Can I say the AI thing? Sure. That you heard from Dr. Fortuna in regards to the work that he did with the strategic plan and pulling some of the common themes earlier in the year, but he was awesome. I'm going to let Christy jump right back in because she's got a really good piece of information she would like to share.
Forgot one really important thing. So there's something else we have going on the side that is meant to support the work of that action plan for next year, which is Ruiz was able to develop an AI tool called Brookline Equity Coach, and we've been testing it and really looking at it. But basically, teachers can type in, teachers will have access to it, and they'll be able to type in write me a lesson plan on restorative justice circles for 5th graders. And we've tested it. It generates a lesson plan, a very actionable one. And we're testing it on every single module to ensure that it serves as, since we are a team of 2 and we can't be everywhere at every time, but we want practitioners to feel supported, that they will feel that support by utilizing technology in these ways that we can use it. So it's so exciting.
And keeping in mind that this tool is whatever we put into the tool, that's what gets spit out. So we were doing a lot of work with Zaretta Hammond. We have some of that work coming up with some of our equity leads. We also have, Dr. Fortuna has Zaretta Hammond coming to the district. So everything is connected in collaboration. So we're really excited about that. So on the horizon, we're going to be continuing our residencies. We have our equity lead interviews that will be starting next week. Then the training will begin June 3rd. And then we are accepting bids for the equity audit. Right now, we have one from Hanover Research. We're awaiting one from Equity Process, and then Longview Education. So the next thing is questions.
Yeah, thank you, Claire and Christy, for the very comprehensive presentation. Do we have questions and comments from the school committee? Mariah.
Thank you both. That was interesting. I have 7 questions. I'll try to be quick. Could you just update a little bit on where we're at with the data on understanding our educators in terms of how, bringing up the policy, how they represent the student community? I remember we had the meeting in February or something when we were talking about that there was the multiple sources of data, and some of them were.
In regards to demographics?
Correct.
Okay, I still don't have much on that. I mean, I'll be partnering with Susan. I think we are still in the process of trying to find the right mechanism to do that. Susan, I'm not sure if you have an update in regards to what's happening with Aspen. I know we've been trying to figure out how we can utilize some of the tools that we have, but we're still in the process of trying to figure that out. So I'm sorry, I don't have anything on that.
Oh, that's an update. Okay, thank you. When you were talking about your work in Goal 1 and you talked about sort of the common excellence and then the variability, how is the variability in, that you saw there shared back with OTL or with the principals? And sort of what's the systemic action that's coming out of that?
Right. So right now, what we've been doing is debriefing with the school team and then coming back and touching base with Dr. Fortuna, and then we'll be doing that with the principals and principal meetings.
Okay, so is there a systemic action that's sort of coming out of that, or like, is there some sort of professional development that's going to be structured around that, or?
So she's in my ear. Yeah. So the training models, yes, but also thinking that next year, as we are right now, OEE, OSS, and OTL, we are in the process of planning our professional development for next year. A lot of that anecdotal data will be help informing what systemic changes we want to put in place in regards to instructional rounds next year. I think next year what you're going to see is it won't just be our team. There will be members from various groups, myself from OEE, Christy and I from OEE, we have someone from OTL, as well as someone from OSS, and different school members actually joining as a full instructional round team to go into schools and do a more comprehensive data dive.
It makes so much sense because a lot of the things you were talking about were accommodations for diverse learning styles, right? So to me, it was really interesting that this was an OEE perspective, but it really does speak to OTL and OSS as well.
Well, I'm really hoping that we can start to redefine the work of OEE, that it's the Educational Equity Office, and that we know that we do a lot of work on a culture and a sense of belonging, but really it's about the instructional practice that we really want to dig in and partner with OSS and OTL in.
That's wonderful to hear. You mentioned the web pages and forms you've created. We looked at those, was it last month? I was just curious if you've had the chance to sort of like update the website yet.
We've updated a little bit,
Okay.
but we really realized that there's a lot of work that still needs to happen there. I think early on, we were trying to we had multiple forms because we were really trying to make sure there was something for everybody. But a lot of the feedback we received in subcommittee and even emails that we have received from community members who are using it, it's hard to figure out like what, and we don't want to put that much pressure on the person who's actually trying to submit and do a good thing, whether there's something they actually observed or if someone who's experiencing something. I remember, Andy, you had mentioned something about, or it was either you or Val talked about someone like the victim having to kind of decipher what their experience was as they're trying to report it, which
Am
is
I being
already hard
harassed or
enough.
bullied? They don't
Exactly.
know.
So I think that's where we are now. The form that was used before, from my understanding, I've never seen that form. I don't have access to that. That form was a one comprehensive form that was just bullying and harassment. I think we were trying to get away from that and try to see if we could have different forms. But I do think it makes more sense probably to go to something more comprehensive in one. But that's not too daunting because I think we have to remember that if it's too many questions and too much, people won't fill it out.
Yeah, thank you. So you're still working on
We're
this?
still working on it.
Okay. You mentioned that the staff and the community climate surveys haven't been done since before pandemic. I thought one of them was brand new. Wasn't the staff one brand new?
We did a snapshot earlier in the year. That was the one that had the 150 responses that really kind of highlighted the work that we needed to
No,
do.
I meant like pre-pandemic. Whereas, isn't one of them, I thought the staff one was never done before. Is it not? I was mistaken. Okay, but you said they were done before the pandemic too.
Well,
You said-
yeah,
Okay.
before 2019.
Will the data that's from these new ones be comparable? Like, will we be able to compare certain things across, whether it's sentiment or some of the questions, will they be comparable from pre-pandemic to now to sort of have more longitudinal data?
Yeah.
So yes, a lot of them will be the same, but Matt and I, we went through and we made a more thorough version of it with an example that we had from the Department of Education, from the U.S. Department of Education, where we added some questions, especially since the previous survey was older. We wanted to make sure that now we really deeply understand that there's so many elements of diversity in someone's identity, and we want to make sure we're asking questions that hit at that too. So particularly what you said, a focus on, are we asking about accommodations for all types of learners? Are we asking about who we're providing access to? We want to make sure that that's included, whereas I think previously, sometimes earlier iterations of surveys focus mainly on one or two aspects of diversity more. So this one is similar, but more comprehensive.
Thanks. I'm getting close to the end, I promise, Andy. I am coming on to the fifth question. I've got two more after that. Does the staff survey include demographic questions so that you can disaggregate experience by different identities?
So yes, it includes demographic questions, and this is speaks to the point of that we want to ensure we're collecting data very accurately. We've added additional categories for ethnicity, so for people to be able to disclose if they are Middle Eastern, Arab, Persian, etc., based off of a lot of the community feedback that we received, as well as like very extensive demographic questions. But what we really want the community to hear is that while we can disaggregate that data, the data that is available to the school administrator will not have that demographic info attached to the response to protect the anonymity of all respondents. And that's really important for the community to hear.
Okay, thanks. You talked about an implicit bias tool for the interview committees. Could you just describe that a little bit more?
Sure. So the tool was put together in collaboration with MPDE, and was a tool that really helps in the pre-phase. So when you're meeting with, you're pulling your team together, it's an opportunity to go through, it's the hours worth of professional development where you're just going through and really trying to make sure that you are aware of biases that exist. Because oftentimes it's just really difficult to even acknowledge that you have some, but to really go through. And some of the, the quick ones that you'll see, there's one that comes up that there's a cartoon and the person's really overweight. And oftentimes, we talk about that because, oftentimes we talk about race, we talk about gender, but people don't talk about things around other physical attributes, and weight can be a huge piece, where someone walks into the room and it totally changes. Oftentimes, people are willing to cover up names and things like that. Sometimes that's helpful, but oftentimes it's not. As we think about our effort to really make sure that we have a diverse population, we want to look at everyone. We also talk a little bit in this tool, if we talk about requirements and preferred. So if you really want someone with a doctorate, then you need to say that, as opposed to, putting it out there, preferred doctorate or preferred master's, and then when someone comes in and does not have that, but has all the qualifications, there's a bias in you that you really wanted that. So that's what you really wanted. So we need to say that. So sometimes it's about going through the tool and really naming some of the things, and then having us revisit some of the procedures and policies that we have.
Thank you. So it's more of like a training, not just.
It's a training,
Okay.
yes.
Last question. The OEE feedback form, I think you said before that it won't be continuing now with the climate survey. Like that was a one-off because now the climate surveys will be providing
Yes.
that content. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It was great, really helpful.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Karen?
So thank you for all this. I really feel like when you've talked about this being a difficult year, it's been a difficult year for teachers as well. And I think that the support that they can feel through the examples that you give and all of the resources you give them is just so helpful, and that improves the student experience, right? And I'm already hearing from the teachers that they like to have those templates for writing letters to parents, and it's helpful because we all know our own points of view, but if we're representing a school system, we need to have somebody who has our back and has sort of expressed ideas that we can then, put out there to the community. So that's super helpful. I also really liked looking at, hearing from you about how much you talked to students and teachers and community. And I just sort of wanted to know, going forward, instead of like this being something that kind of like happens to a teacher, where are the additional times the teacher can or the educator can weigh in on things? Like, are they able to, is there is there going to be further surveys? Is that part of what you're looking at? Are you going to use teacher expertise? When there's the different modules, could a teacher choose which module they start first, so there's a little bit of choice? Could you just speak to the continued process? So this isn't something that we're doing to educators, but like, what is their part in this?
So first, I would say I think it's going to be incredibly important for us to always be able to provide space. So some of the work that I think we're doing with building leaders is really starting to understand what is it that each building can provide so that teachers feel as though they have an opportunity, to have some of that affinity time with one another, whether it's through common planning time, is there some time that can happen during staff meeting time for different type of discourse, because I think oftentimes that doesn't happen enough. So I hear what you're saying in regards to like feeling like something's being done to them, and they need that opportunity. We don't have anything formalized this year. We did not offer affinity spaces for educators this year, which was something that my predecessor did. This wasn't something that we had the bandwidth for, but I do think that there's a place for having some of that space for teachers. We want to make sure that as we're going through the climate survey, there are a lot of needs. You know, the fact that we partnered with B to have that event around retention for our diverse staff, it was really important for folks to be able to come together. So we don't want to ignore that. I do think we have to figure out how we can become more creative with less and less time and more being required of people and more needs for our students. In regards to, I'm a coach, you know, that was what I did for many, many years, an instructional coach. And in coaching, you know, you train the trainer. You're really hoping that folks, if you have an expertise already in a particular area, we want them to jump right in and be able to help do that modeling with folks, but also be able, what's nice about the modules that Christy is setting up is that there are places for everyone to start. We know that we have lots of staff that's already gone through RJ, through Suffolk University. So they have a foundation. We do plan on offering RJ 1 and 2. It might be that they don't need RJ 1. They can just go right to RJ 2. And so this flexibility, and I'm hoping that if anything, we've expressed that we want to be flexible and we want to partner with folks and that we're willing for folks to do an assessment and say, you know what, I think we can kind of tweak this. This will work better there's some schools that are further along in this work than others. So we have to consider that as well.
Can I just share one thing too? Also, I think one thing that I wanted to highlight is before these modules, before this plan in any iteration was shown to anyone, it was first shown to teachers, and it was completely revamped, recreated, adjusted based off of their feedback and expertise. As somebody who was very recently a teacher, I think I have so much respect and honor for the expertise of teachers and what they do, and any plan that happens without their input, it's not going to work, you know, and I think that's highlighted in why one of our first huge efforts was the establishment of the staff culture and climate survey, because we know the expertise lies with the people that are with our kids every day. And so we need to create the channels where their voices are directing the action of the people at the top. So I really appreciate that question. And I really want to be clear, and with the training program, nothing moves forward there without the expertise of teachers.
Thank you.
Stephen?
Thanks. So first, thanks for this presentation. I feel like I feel caught up, and I think it helps me as a school committee member, and hopefully anyone listening, to have a deeper appreciation of just the sheer breadth of activities your office has been engaged in for the past year. So thank you very much for that. I have 3 questions. One is, so in the strategic plan for this foundational year, there were just two activities that OE was supposed to, as far as I could tell, reporting out on. One you touched on, which was the equity audit, that it was going to be contracted within this year. You mentioned, or there was on the slide, that there were 3 potential offers for that. Are we still on track to contract that
I think
audit?
so.
Okay.
I do think so. Folks, a couple people have sent the preliminary. I'm looking for a real quote, you know, a real bid. And I think that's something I'll actually need to be working with Susan's office a little bit more. I received something else today, and I'm like, well, this is not really it. So that's something that I'll need to work with OAF, Office of Administration and Finance, just to make sure we get the proper bid in.
Okay, and 1B for that. The other one was, there was a mention of creating a working group on bias for the 8th to 9th grade transition. I didn't see anything in the presentation on that. Is that still in your scope for this year, or is that?
It is, and I think the year is just about over, but it's really trying to pull people together to figure out what does that actually look like. I mean, I think we need to be transparent. The 8th and 9th grade transition has been challenging, and some of the smaller fires, well, I would say small and big fires that we put out, has had a lot to do with our eighth graders, and so it's a work that really needs to happen. I think our work with MSAN needs to become stronger. This year, we were not able to really fulfill to really utilize that. I think that those resources will be a huge help for us, and that's something that we're trying to pull a team together now. We've talked to Matt Dubois about that as well, to kind of come together to really build a solid team so that we can actually meet that goal.
Okay, so that was question number 1.
Sure. That question.
To that question, that's why the training plan is centered around 6th to 8th grade faculty to support that 8th to 9th grade transition. And so the idea is that each school's equity team will be sort of leading that work within their middle school, but that a task force of Dr. Guillory, myself, Claire, Matt Dubois, Michelle, Gabe, and Dr. Jody will be meeting to monitor progress quarterly on if the trainings are serving the purpose of facilitating that transition and facilitating belonging for students from middle school to high school. And we'll be going over the data measures that we have on that too.
Okay, I think the only thing that was actually in the strategic plan was just constituting the team. So is the team itself going to be OEE plus deputy superintendents plus the equity teams at the school? Is that what you're envisioning for the team, or is there something else?
The team right now, the task force is right now Dr. Guillory, myself, Claire, Jody, Gabe, Michelle, Dr. Matt Dubois.
Okay, and that's what we're thinking is going to be that.
Yes, that's the team that's meeting to monitor progress on that 8th to 9th grade transition and how the training modules are supporting that effort. And then it's the equity teams that will be doing these efforts at their middle schools.
But I think you're referring to the team on bias.
Yeah.
Yes, which I think there'll be multiple teams. But I think the team that I'm referring to was more about the bias in that, again, trying to make sure that we have representatives from the schools. Because I think that's the most important thing is to make sure, and so that's been the key piece. So I brought up MSIN because we weren't able to fulfill our commitment with that the way we wanted to, because we need commitment from 7th and 8th grade personnel, whether it's a counselor, and then also Matt Dubois and as well as OEE working together with that team to actually create the bias team. So that's what I'm referring to.
Okay, so that's still.
That's in the works, and we hope to have it done before the end of the school year.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so now the bigger question, this is more for you, Christina. So I was really excited to hear about the theory of change that you were working on that you put together. I guess I want to know more about it. And when I think of a theory of change, I think of like a big if-then statement. If we do 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, then this will happen. And your theory of change looked to me like, if we do these 10 competencies, then, but I wasn't sure what the then was. So could you say more about, like, if we do this TOT around these 10 competencies around which we're going to be creating this bespoke curriculum out of OEE, what's going to happen as a result?
Yes, thank you for that. So we do have a developed if-then statement, but I strategically did not share it here because since this effort is a partnership with these 3 schools, I want to ensure that we are fully aligned in that and in total agreement before sharing it here, knowing that certain schools, like we said, are going to have needs that are a little bit different and that may subtly change that or adjust it by school. So I strategically did not share it here, but you will know it at some point.
I hear that.
Okay.
And I respect that you're wanting to do this as collaboratively as you can. I would just ask that as you develop the then part, that there are indicators around the then so that we, as a school committee, I'm sure I'm preaching to the converted here, have a way of assessing the success of this initiative, because it seems like a really ambitious, rich initiative, and I want us to be able to celebrate its success.
I have good news for you, Stephen. We already have the indicators, and we already have a schedule for when we will be taking the data at benchmark, midpoint, and at the end of the cycle.
And I will just smile. And then my third and last question is, why bespoke curriculum? Why not off-the-shelf or customized curriculum? Why would we want to create this in-house when some of those 10 competencies look very familiar?
Totally. To me, what I think is the most effective materials and resources are the ones that directly respond to the needs of the population that they're meant to serve. And I think in Brookline, that looks different. We have a community here or a school district here that is very different than the makeup of any other school district that I've been a part of. And thus there are dynamics here that require that we handle these competencies like with further nuance. And I really want to be responsive to that. And especially like thinking of a lot of the scenarios that teachers have been so brave to say, and in some of these faculty meetings, they say in front of their admin, which I think is such a sign of courage, this thing happened in my classroom. I don't know what to do. I think I might have mishandled this scenario. I need advice on it. I think making a bespoke curriculum allows for that level of personalization to the common incidents that are arising out of PSB schools. Rather than just kind of like a one size fits all, this can be really specific and thus hopefully extremely effective. That's the idea.
Okay, I hear that. I guess I think when I see like restorative justice as a competency, there's obviously so much training around that already. I would think that the more bespoke we are, the more difficult it would be to have a common indicator around that. So if we chose one that's already well established, that has strong indicators around it, that we customized thoroughly to fit the Brookline context, it would be easier to measure than building one from scratch. And we could still satisfy what you're saying is important to have something that's thoroughly localized, rooted in the Brookline context.
Oh, and I want to be totally clear, all these are based in, so the RJ one, for example, is completely based in the principles of the Suffolk training, but I think the idea is that in making it bespoke, we're able to shorten it to 45 minutes to be able to function kind of as like a thorough crash course for educators that can be completed during the required time that they're meant to be at that CPT meeting once a month. So I think that's the point of making it bespoke, that it's like we're distilling it down to like, these are the ultimate things you need to know to be able to do this in your classroom in a time efficient manner.
I see. Okay, thanks very much, Christina.
No problem.
Suzanne?
Yes, thank you, Andy, and thank you for the presentation. So I just want to kind of go back to what Sarah was saying, just again, reiterate that restorative justice circles are not new to Brookline. I don't know how far we are, but I know that the BEU has put some effort into that, looking into it in the training. And so, I think, so if you have a restorative justice 101 and then you have a 201 or something, sounds like a good idea to me, because I'm sure there are many who have been through some training and don't need to start at the beginning.
Exactly.
And I'm sure there are many who need the training because you have turnover and new staff and all that. So I just wanted to back Sarah up on that. Be sure to check in with the teachers on what they need. I didn't hear anything about equity review of materials or of even our curriculum. Are you doing that? Are you leaving that up to OTL or?
No, I think you didn't hear about it for this right now, but that's where we're leading to. So some of the work that we'll be doing with OTL coming up in the next few weeks will really be trying to get a schedule together so we can start thinking about how we do that work and planning for that for the study.
And so when you were doing your residencies, did you have any sense of that? Did it feel like most of the materials were spot on, or did you feel like?
Well, I think some of the variability that we saw, there's lots of materials that are curated by our teachers, so there's a variance there. And so there's definitely, anecdotally, I can say that there's some things that, raise an eyebrow and like, okay, I can see why you make that connection. I know the standard, that type of thing, but also that, we need, there's some room for consistency in making sure that, and part of doing a review would be really important for us to make sure that that's happening.
Yeah, okay, great. And could you talk a
Sorry,
little bit about?
Suzanne, on that, can I just say, it's my understanding that was a year 2 strategic plan activity.
Okay. But that's.
It is, but it's something
That's
that we
next
would be
year.
doing anyway.
Year 2 is next year?
No, year 1's next year.
Yeah, oh, year 1.
This is our foundational year.
So that's a long time.
But it is work. I think when I look at the strategic plan, we know that that's something that we're following, but there's work that's happening parallel to that we know that we have to do.
Yeah, thank you. Could you talk a little bit about coaching, what that would look like? Who would do coaching? Are you in the classrooms coaching on equity?
I need a coaching staff. I was a coach. It's hard. I mean, we are a team of 2. We're hoping with the equity leads, this is going to help support that work. But I think we've talked about this all along when we were going through the proposal and the budgeting process, that it's going to be daunting work for our equity leads because they're classroom teachers. And if all things were perfect, we'd have coaches, equity coach between 1 or 2 schools. And so we'd have, let's say, 5 or 6 equity coaches that would be able to work K through 8 to be assigned to 2 schools and have, equity cycles that would really work. It's going to be challenging. I want to be transparent. I don't know what that's going to look like, because we don't have equity coaches. We're going to have equity leads, and we have Christy and myself. And, we don't have the bandwidth to do that. Now, in the schools that we're doing the pilot work, you're going to see coach-like work happening. Christy is already doing that work at FRR. She's doing an exceptional job, and she is coaching teachers. The modules that she just put up over the last couple of months is just kind of like the last of what she's been doing. She's been doing individual coaching with teachers. It is, as a former coach, I know how difficult it is for a teacher to be vulnerable and to be able to say, I need some help. And the fact that they're reaching out to her is huge. So she's built trust in those schools, and that coaching is happening. But again, she doesn't have the bandwidth as one person to be able to do that across those 3 piloted schools and across all the schools that we have in the district. So as we think about years to come, let's think about how we can expand this office and how we can collaborate more with OTL. I know we're going to be doing a lot of work with MTSS. Again, trying to make sure folks realize that equity is the foundation. It's even through everything that we do. It's not a separate arm. Equity is embedded in instructional practice. Someone said today, I think it was Michelle, she said it's the leverage. Instructional practice is the leverage for equity. That really is the work, and that it shouldn't be seen as something separate. We know there's aspects of that work that you need to have some individualized professional development and expertise in, but equity is the root of all the work that we do. I'm hoping, as I was sharing Jesse's vision, matching it with our vision, and also thinking very much about Mask's definition of educational equity. That's not our definition, but as we start to work towards what we think this office should look like and the work that we do in its connection to OSS and OTL, I'm hoping that's the thinking that people will have.
Just let you know, Claire, I was a coach too.
I know you were. I know we have common, I know you know.
So I know how important coaching is, and I've not seen it in the budget for this
I
year
know.
or probably for next year. I don't know. Maybe some things to think about are lead teachers who can serve as coaches for their colleagues.
Or seed?
Maybe we make sure, huh?
Or seed?
Seed, I don't, maybe.
Some of our seed participants have applied for the equity leads. I mean, they think the equity leads are very similar to lead teachers, but I think it's going to be daunting. We advertised for 22, we had 14 people respond. It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. The other thing maybe is some of our interventionists could be really thinking about wearing the equity lens so that.
And I think that's the work with OTL and
Right,
OSS
so
that
while
we
you're
need to have.
doing the work, they're doing multiple jobs, which is hard, but as long as they're in there anyway helping, maybe that, I'm just trying to brainstorm.
I think that's exactly where we're going, though, as we think about instructional rounds and doing those instructional rounds with our office, OTL, OSS, and other team members. It's really an opportunity for us to look at instructional practice in a much broader sense. Using the new rubric that DESI's launching, I think that's going to help this because equity is built right into that. So it doesn't look like a separate arm of the work.
Right, so thank you. And I put down tier 1 and doing the tiers and the instructional at the basic level. Again, if those people are really focused in on equity, understand what.
Tier 1 and tier 2 is everybody's responsibility.
Yeah, understand what those are. So thank you.
Welcome.
All right, any other questions from the committee? Yes, so Jesse and Carolyn. I'm not sure who had their hand up first. Go ahead, Jesse.
So thank you very much. My question has to do with, I think, goal 2, the community and culture. One of the ways of knowing that we're doing better and reaching sort of where we want to get to together is measurable outcomes. So that requires that we have the data. And so you mentioned about the bullying and harassment forms. Maybe you can update us at a subcommittee meeting of DEIJ some time back. The number of incidents that have been recorded was probably low compared to the reality within the schools. And so I guess my question on a practical level is how far away are we as a school culture and community from where we need to be? And how can the data we've gotten so far help us determine that or not? Maybe we just don't have enough data and we really don't know. And of course, the equity measures that are being put into place in the training, I guess the goal there is that it will begin to impact the culture in a way so that less incidents happen. But if we're not meaningfully collecting all the incidents, how will we be able to measure that we're getting to where we want to be?
I think there's a couple of different things. I think in regards to, there's the data that we're going to collect on incidents that take place. But I also think there's really taking a good hard look at school climate. That's really important for work that we need to do. I think that's some of the work that you'll see in some of the school improvement plans. But I think we need to take an honest, transparent look at each school has its own community. I think that's something we need to be doing. I think that's in the work that we'll be doing with principals, that's some of the work that OEE will be working on, is really taking a good look and an assessment of school climate and school culture at the individual schools. I think it's something that we have to consider district-wide as well. Trying to collect the data for specific incidents has been tricky. I mean, we've been really honest and transparent about that. The numbers that we're getting are low in comparison to what people are saying. I think the mechanism needed some work as well. When it looks like too much work, people just don't. And when we've talked to students, some of them have felt like, what's the point in reporting? This is specifically when we're talking to our high school students, that they don't think anything's going to happen, so they're not going to. And they might share with their parents, and then their parents come and share it with us. But they're not actually reporting it. But again, I think there's work that we can do better. Like we talked about at the last subcommittee meeting, making sure that there's a QR code, so when everyone has a device, they can just click on, and then they're able to actually report something. That's work that we have to do. It's going to be challenging, though. This is something we talk about every week. Chrissy and I kind of look at this form, like, what can we do differently? But I think it's something that we need more support with. We reached out to our strategy team as well to figure out, like, what can we do? I know we're trying to realign some things with Aspen that might be helpful when things are happening in buildings. They put the notes in Aspen. We need to make sure all of our systems are talking to one another. So that's just work that's going to continue. But I do think we need to try to have more of a pulse on the school climate. So I hear what you're saying. I don't have the best answer to put it in a nice, neat bow, but it's something that we're aware of and that we still have to keep working on. It's going to be a journey. It's not going to be a quick fix.
Yeah, I was going to say, it has a lot to do with communication because, speaking personally, 4 or 5 months of campaigning, so I went to every corner of Brookline, literally, and this was a very common theme from parents and of current students and from parents of former students, parents who have taken their kids out of the system for various reasons. And a very common theme was that there's sort of this, like you're saying, it's hard to quantify because they know what they're feeling and they know what they're hearing from peers, and students know what they're hearing from other students, and a lot of parents talk, but they don't have a way of measuring it. And so I think as a school community, the more quickly we can get to a quantitative measure of this situation for all groups of people and be as transparent as possible so people know we're wrestling with it. So then they know that all the work we're putting into it has a goal to reduce and provide a way of measuring something that will produce some desired goal we're aiming for that would probably sort of satisfy, at least in a beginning way, a lot of people out there who are wondering what's going on. How come we're hearing things, but we can't see the data that support what
I think what's really tricky too is some of the things that get reported. If we were to see a drawing or something, if somebody drew something on a desk, you may not know who actually drew it.
Right.
But that's now being reported because we're encouraging our building leaders to make sure that's reported. But then it's like, well, what's substantiated? It's hard to substantiate something that was written on a desk. You don't know who did it, but it was found. A teacher may have found it and reports it to the principal. So I think it's having these open conversations and dialogue as to, I think what we're looking is for a hard substantiation, and oftentimes we're unable to provide that. In some of the webinars that I've been attending, it's been really difficult. Most of the examples that they give us are really egregious. They're not the situations that we're dealing with that are really hard to decipher sometimes because, again, we don't have cameras in places, we don't know who's done something, so it's hard to figure out like what will be the next step other than a public communication to the community. This is happening. This is what we're doing on our end to try to make sure that we are meeting the needs of the students and trying to repair the full community from harm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Carolyn?
Thanks. Thanks for that presentation. I have a question also about data. the data that was used to inform the plan that you showed in the presentation with the 10 things. And that, but I also have a couple sort of, what is CPT time? Collaborative planning time? Okay, and then this plan that you have, the 10 competencies, is this something that would be mandatory for CPT time for educators in 6th through 8th grade? Like, what's the implementation here?
So the implementation in regards to, we have worked with our building leaders. There are 3 schools who are willing to pilot this. So there are common planning time that is directed by administrators, and there's common planning time that is held by the teachers and staff. So the time that is owned by the administrator, that is used to do professional development, and this is a form of professional development that will be provided.
Okay, but it would be, so all 6th through 8th grade teachers?
Yes.
It would be mandatory?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Super clear. And then I lost the thread a little bit on the data that informed this. So I understand there's a survey that's currently out to parents. And are you saying there's a similar survey, a culture and climate survey that's out to educators?
So a cultural climate survey was sent out to families and caregivers as well as teachers and staff.
Okay, but that's not the data that's informing this work, because you don't have that.
We don't have the
that yet.
results
Okay.
of that.
So the data is the snapshot, the 150.
So the data that's informing is a combination of the snapshot, but also the anecdotal data that we've been receiving from our residencies and from our classroom visits and school visits and observations.
Okay, and the 150 snapshot that was done earlier in the year, I think you said that was a snapshot of educators and staff. So can you be more specific? And then I understand from earlier in the year, there was also a feedback survey attached to the strategic plan that I think had about 750 responses, and those responses, I believe, were really focused on the community, talking about the desire for academic high standards and challenging curriculum. So how does that data tie into this?
So the first question you have is in regards to what part of the 150 responses are you looking for? I'm sorry, I'm just making sure I'm catching.
I just want to understand when you say educators and staff, like just basically who were those 150?
Teachers.
Okay.
And also to paraprofessionals, BCBAs, special education educators, people that run the gamut of all staff at PSB. And also to a lot of this data came from that, also came from, I've been doing this equity cycle at FR entrenched there for months and months, and a lot of data came from there, as well as from our residencies, from meetings with community members, from meetings with teachers, just from all the work we do every day. So much data results from it, and that's what's informed those competencies in the plan that you saw.
Okay, and I also have a question about restorative justice. And when does that sort of happen?
What do you mean?
Well, what would trigger a restorative justice intervention or restorative justice circle? Or
There's multiple ways that it might. So it could be that there could be an incident that actually took place where there could have been a disagreement between 2 students in class. It could have been a very light disagreement, but a teacher might decide, specifically as we're thinking about elementary, they might do this during their, their morning meeting time where they would run a circle where there was a disagreement, let's say on a recess field, or there was something that took place during center time and they want to get ahead of it, so they would do a restorative circle. Restorative circles are often about classroom climate and making sure that we are all being good citizens within the community. So that's what would trigger, let's say, something in elementary. It could be something that's a little bit more egregious where there could have been a physical fight that took place. It could have been, something awful was said, and so then the teachers are now then going to come together and try to do a restorative circle to restore the harm that took place with the two students, and if it actually also impacted the rest of the community. There's also really proactive circles that happen through restorative justice where you're kind of, again, trying to build that climate within the school, the classroom, and school climate, classroom climate. Sure.
Which is why, actually, to your point, we broke it down into these two modules, because I think restorative circles, they fall under these two categories, right? One is the community building circles, and the other is addressing harm. And so the hope is that if practitioners, and the whole way restorative justice circles were designed is that if we're doing these community building circles consistently, that we're creating that culture where students are deeply known. And they use this quote in the Suffolk training that is like, you don't bully someone whose story you deeply know. So the idea is it's like a preventative measure to create that strong culture, so that we need to utilize restorative justice 2.0, addressing harm as infrequently as possible, because the idea is it'll reduce those incidents of harm.
And also really considering the fact that, many of our guidelines and laws have changed. I mean, it's really important. We want to make sure that we keep students in school. We are responsible to making sure that we provide restorative practices to make sure that we're not doing suspensions with schools and things like that. So that's greatly important. And speaking to what you were saying, just around school climate, doing the community building will be so important in hoping that we start to build a better climate within our classrooms and our schools across the district. I know you had another question about some data, though. I just want to seemed like there were a lot of questions. I just want to make sure I caught them all.
My question was about whether the 750 responses in the strategic plan community feedback survey inform this work at all.
I would say yes.
And also one thing, like the main theme when we categorized it all was belonging as well, when we looked at all those responses and codified them. So I think that was a huge part of what informed this.
All right, thank you very much, Claire and Christy, for presenting to us and the community and for fielding so many questions from the committee.
Thank you.
Both are true, so. Yeah. All right, so next up we have the fiscal year 2024 third quarter financial report. So this was presented already at yesterday's finance subcommittee meeting. So Susan and Diane Johnson presented. All of the school committee members who were at this meeting were also at the finance meeting yesterday, as were some folks from the advisory committee who also weighed in. So at this point, I'll turn the floor over to Susan and to Mariah to summarize, what was presented yesterday, what the conversation was then, and to get us going on further discussion of our finances.
So I think what we'll do is I will make a very quick 90-second recap of our 90-minute meeting from yesterday, most of which, but not all of which, but the vast majority of which was focused on this topic. And then everyone should have received the updated memo earlier today. And I know it's posted on the materials page of the website as well. Did we get it printed out too? I don't know if it's awesome. Thanks, Betsy. So, so you all have it in front of you, and we thought we'd take the remaining 18.5 minutes of our 20-minute allocation, basically for if there's additional questions that have come up from the committee as a result of the memo, not to rehash what we've already discussed yesterday, but really additional questions, additional thoughts, anything that we want to add to the conversation, understanding that this is still a very active topic, obviously, and we will be getting ongoing updates. So we don't want to do what we did yesterday again. We don't need to retread the same ground. The quick update is, and I made notes for myself to make sure I didn't forget anything, essentially that the projection at this point is that the budget will be overspent by $1,709,286. The analysis by the finance team shows that the bulk of the overspending is in the services category. Susan, correct me if I get any of my summary wrong, but I'm pretty sure so far I'm right. And there was actually the net is this 1.7 million, but there was a larger deficit, and there is a freeze in other areas of the budget that's offsetting the larger $4.6 million overspend. The finance team has come up with 4 actions to mitigate the deficit, and I can't remember them perfectly, so I'm going to look at the notes from the report. But the first one is because the non-salary accounts have very little money in them at this point, there's going to be a transfer of 1.2 million to cover from the salary line to the non-salary lines. Susan, I think in our policy, that level of transfer actually has to get voted by school committee. So I don't know if you need us to vote that, but we might want to.
I guess we do that.
Yeah. We might want to consider. We don't usually do that, but we don't usually get told about transfers. So this is an exciting, momentous day for some of the right reasons and some of the wrong reasons.
Can I interrupt with a question about that line? I mean, what would it mean on the ground to transfer that much money from salary to non-salary? Like, what happens to people when we do that?
Nothing will happen to people.
Right.
But the way the system's set up, we can't actually issue purchase orders for the money that we're already obligated to, so we're not going to be able to see it in the financial system unless we can do the POs. So the idea here is to transfer the money from salary, which isn't totally consumed yet, because we still have X number of payrolls in front of us, so that we can encumber the money, see it, and manage it for the rest of the year. Obviously, we're upside down, so we don't have enough money overall in order to pay all of our bills by the end of the year, which means that if we're unable to make any more adjustments from what we see today, which I do believe we will, but if we weren't able to, then we would go to the town and I guess advisory committee here, and request a reserve fund transfer, so that we would have enough in our appropriation to cover the expenses. It's not a cash flow issue, it's a budgetary issue, so.
So that sort of covers, so the first one is the transfer, the second 2 are really about continuing to just monitor the POs that are in the system, and to track expenses, and find either as you say, identify funding sources, and at the end, if we need to, we do a reserve fund transfer. And the impacts to the FY25 budget from the ongoing discovery of FY24 budget are still being determined. So now we get to the part where people can ask additional questions from the documents or other questions that have come up to them. Stephen, Andy, do you want me to call on people, or are you calling on people?
Sure, you can call on folks.
Okay.
Except, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, just continuation of Andy's question. Another naive question. What is the concrete impact of freezing? What is not being spent, and what is the impact of not spending that?
Well, in essence, since the middle of March, for the most part, any resources we absolutely did not need to spend, doesn't mean that we didn't want to, or there wasn't value to what we would have spent money on, but rather what was absolutely essential we have encumbered, but other areas we had to suspend any further processing of POs for the year. So hit particularly hard would be OTL, as many of you heard in newspaper articles, or maybe they were social media. I don't read either for here. But the trout project, we weren't able to fund transportation for that. Also, I can give examples, but that's an example of that. In the area of my area, we have spent no more additional resources during the hiring season on recruitment efforts. And so anywhere that we could, we just are not spending money. So not ideal, not what you want, but at this particular point, none of this is what we want. And so we have to take action to try to stem the tide of this challenge that we're faced with. So we're not able to, I don't believe by the end of the year, we're going to be able to close the entire gap, but we're certainly have identified the gap as we see it, and now we are going to do more forensics and dive deeper into, are there any expenses that are currently being charged to the operating budget that perhaps should have or could have been charged against other special revenue funds. Some of the areas that, some of this is learning for us. We're all new to Brookline. And so, as you know, through the budget process, Andy pointed out, that we seek reimbursement for the BEU president. And so we were able to reduce those expenses. Well, I found another situation where expenses have been charged to the operating budget, but we're going to get reimbursed by BEF. Now, the practice should be that those expenses should have hit the BEF revolving fund or grant fund, not the operating budget. We'll correct those types of transactions moving forward. But it's really looking deeply at those expenses and seeing if there are other areas in which we can and or should have charged off expenses in other areas. So that's some of the work that will take place in the next 3 weeks by the finance team, and we'll keep you posted. Also, if we're able to unencumber or reduce encumbrances on existing POs, and that frees up funds available that will then reduce our $1.7 million gap right now.
And Dr. Givens, you also at one point talked about a number of transactions that were, I'll call them blind to the school department, where there were some charges that were being made against our accounts that weren't necessarily passing through you. So you've put in safeguards around those as well.
To the extent that we can see them, and I say that over and over again this year, what we see, we share. We certainly have communicated with staff about, how to manage some of these challenges that I've documented here. So people are well aware, that contracts need to be reviewed and signed by me. They're aware that purchase orders need to be in place before they engage in work with other vendors and or buy products. So all of those internal controls that are talked about here are not, this is not the first conversation internally we're having about those. We believe, I have no reason not to believe that all of the information we've requested has been shared with us, but I can't guarantee that, but I believe that at this point. And if it's not so, I will say so.
I have two questions. My first one is, you said that essentially we're working on only funding essential things. And I think the trout field trip was a real punch in the gut for a lot of people. And I'm wondering, are there other student-facing expenses which will have a meaningful impact on student experience that we are not funding at this point?
And I think I want to say, with regard to that particular, the timing of that was the biggest challenge. So those funding for those trips, so POs weren't canceled. So let me be clear. They had not been executed in order to encumber the money for that. And then we couldn't encumber money because there wasn't sufficient resources available in the non-salary lines to execute a PO. And that happened around the time that this project was taking place.
And I don't mean to relitigate it, I just mean to use it as an example of things that were impactful.
Yeah,
So.
and some of it was impacted because of the timing of that, and in fact, when this first happened, the finance team believed that there was a system problem, not a budgetary problem. And so it was a pause put on the brakes to figure out what was going on the backside, as if it was a technical problem, but in fact, it turned out not to be that. So I know that I can share the process. So the FY24 budget, the finance director is really managing and navigating that. My focus has been on the FY25. But I can say that when this occurred, that folks submitted all of their must-haves between now and the end of the year. And I know that the finance director and the finance team worked with OTL and others to winnow down, what we felt was absolutely necessary between now and the end of the year. So were programs impacted? Absolutely, were impacted.
Yeah, there's one other field trip that was canceled.
Okay.
At the same
Do you
time.
want to?
At the same time as the trout field trip was supposed to happen, there was supposed to be a first grade trip to the pond to observe insects and do some naturalistic observing. And again, because of the transportation and not being able to encumber the money to get the kids to said pond, we've brought the pond to the students with some pond water and some bugs to have an experience in their classroom.
Okay. But is that the only sort of student-facing, like meaningful student experience you think that's got caught in this? Okay. And then my second question is, in the part of FY '25, hold on, let me find it because it's in the memo. The impact of FY '24 projected deficit on FY '25 budget planning, you highlight that there's 3 categories that you knew in FY '24, you could already project were going to be higher than had previously been budgeted, and you've already increased them in FY '25. But the FY '24 overage so far is almost 2.5 million, but the FY '25 increase is only 1.8 million, so there's already a $700,000 gap. So how are we closing the rest of that gap, or whatever might exceed it for FY '25?
So when the original budget was put together, transportation, I had carried the higher number, and the deputy superintendent of OSS, reviewed that very closely, and she reduced the amount that she felt was necessary to carry forward. And then we went out to bid, as all of you have heard multiple times, in order to be able to hire a contractor that would be able to provide all of the transportation services that we need. Our current vendor, though they have been with us for a while, has not been able to meet the demand. And so one of the reasons why these expenses are so high this year is because they have been unable to provide that. And so then we have to go out without any competitive process. And with the market the way it is in transportation, there isn't really a lot of competition anyways. So if you have a student that is on an AP and now has a placement that's in another location from where they were before, we have to bring that student to their school when we have agreed to do that. And so in many ways, we have had to pay some really exorbitant transportation fees because we have no way to be able to get a competitive rate. The contractor that was awarded the bid does have sufficient vehicles and staffing to be able to deliver all of our student population within their contract. So that will help contain the costs that are really, that we're unable to contain this year. So the combination of the two. Now, again, this is based on 65 students in out-of-district placements. If that becomes 75 students, then that becomes a problem for us again, right? But the good news is that should that occur, we have rates already bid, and they have an obligation to provide those services. And based on our research, they have the capacity to absorb more than what we're asking for. So there are guardrails on that for next year. And there was a lot of effort put into researching the firm. They do provide special education. I just want to clarify. They do provide special education transportation now, not for us, also for homeless populations in McKinney-Vento. What they haven't had is a significant all-in special education contract like this. They're very motivated. A lot of effort went into, again, checking references and meeting with them multiple times to make sure that they clearly understood and could deliver on all of the requirements that were clearly in detail spelled out in the RFP. So the purchasing team downstairs worked with our transportation coordinator and Diane, our finance director, who has a significant amount of experience with this. The RFP was developed in collaboration with OSS. So we feel, we've done our due diligence there and, feel that we're in pretty good shape for the upcoming year. Doesn't help us here. In our circumstance, that contract doesn't come into play until July 1, so we're, but the year's closing, and, we feel like, based on the information we have from OSS, that we have, we'll be able to cover the expenses, but not until we move the $1.2 million over, and we can increase and/or execute another PO in order to cover the remaining costs.
Can I ask a follow-up question, Andy? Does our current out-of-district transportation contract include any sort of penalty clause, and or does the next one include any sort of penalty clause if they commit to being able to deliver X rides and then they don't, and we end up in a financial predicament? There's no penalty for...
I didn't write this particular one, but I've been told that there are some guardrails. What they are, I don't know. I can find out and get back to you on that, though.
Okay. I mean, the guardrails in the past on transportation contracts have involved like volume going up and down without right, we could ask for up to 10% more and have it be at the same rate. But because this is such a huge impact on our operations across the district, and essentially if there's every benefit to them of claiming X capacity and no downside if they can't deliver, it seems to me that's important that we get our whole budget depends on us getting what they're claiming they will deliver. So I think I just broke this.
I don't know what they are because I didn't, that was something, but I can.
Thank you. That would be helpful to understand.
I'm absolutely can do that. No problem.
Suzanne?
Yeah. I don't want to go line by line, but the one that I'm stuck on are the paraprofessionals.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you didn't write the budget, you didn't create it. But I'm just curious, is how did we end up with such a variance? Did we have additional paraprofessional positions we did not anticipate? Or I'm just curious why there's such a variance there. It's 1.2 million, almost 3.
I can't.
Okay.
I don't know if it was under budgeted. I can't tell. I wish I could. It would be helpful. What I can say is that any of the paraprofessional positions, all of the paraprofessional positions that were on our payroll as of the end of December are in our FY25 budget. The gap right now is there's 12 positions that have evolved since then that are not in our FY25 budget, and OSS right now is going through, now that we have position control, to see if those 12 are in fact, should have been assigned to an open slot, or if they're in fact additional positions required because of student need, and I don't know that yet. Either way, I'll be able to answer that question for next year. Unfortunately, I don't know if it was underfunded or it probably was a combination of underfunding and then additional need arose, and paras perhaps needed to be added.
And I'm interested because we haven't filled all the para spots that we have. Are you just trying to encumber money to the level that we will need them for? Or are we
No, for this year, no.
These are people that are already employed?
Are already employed, yeah. And that's a great question. So when you budget, of course, even this year, we haven't had a HR director all year. We haven't had a director of operations. We haven't had a lot of positions filled that have nothing to do with paraprofessionals. And so by not filling those, I mean, it's killed the rest of us. But But it also, which is not a good thing.
No, not
I don't really appreciate that, no. It's not a fault, it's a circumstance. But that does help offset the impact of some of this. But, a lot of this, as much as I could see, I built into your FY '25, I don't have a baseline for '24. It's been really hard. I mean, I wish I could. We developed a staffing plan when I realized, after a lot of effort, that I was not going to be able to get that information. Then I invested the time with the principals and my colleagues in senior leadership, and we developed one. And that's the best I can do. So I can't tell you what it was supposed to be. I can only tell you what is. And next year I'll be able to tell you what we planned for and what went left or right of center. And I wish, and I've been doing this a long time, so for me to sit here and say that I can't trace back to your original budget, and it's not it's because of it was like a perfect storm situation, changing of account numbers. You went through an override last year, and part of that override was a commitment to cut $1.85 million. Well, your town meeting is at the beginning of June, and then these cuts have to be made. And now you have a shift in the person sitting in my office. Somebody made mention last night that he had, really basically a part-time finance director, and you really didn't have a deputy superintendent last year. Well, I guess Mariah was your interim deputy, so the word on the street wasn't here. So you made, you did the best you could with what you had. But when all of those parts change, and then you also had this convergence of all of these grants that closed, so money was pushed off from the budget over to the grants to spend those out, and I agree, taxpayers should be the court of last resort, right? Not the first place you hit for money. If you can spend somebody else's, spend theirs first, right? Well, those grants were coming to a close, so now expenses are then pushed out. And if you don't have a map of what the thinking of the parties before you had and what was pushed out that was normally in, it's all of these things happening simultaneously that caused it to be so incredibly messy this year. And so I can't change that, so I'm the type of person that looks and says, what can we do? And how do we not find ourselves here again? And so my energy has been into building the systems, and I haven't got them all built. I mean, how can I? I have no HR director. So I'm trying to build over there and run your HR department, at the same time trying to support your entirely new finance team with no director of operations. It's been a lot. I feel incredibly proud of the people that have stuck through this, and what I'm trying to build is a team that will stay. You have had such turnover here. Such turnover here. It's really, you're feeling that now. You can't lose 40% of your tacit organizational knowledge over and over and over again and expect that you're going to be high performing, we'll say. So things are very dysfunctional, and we need to change that. There's a saying in leadership, right? When you have high readiness, you can have low structure. And when you have low readiness, which is what you are, you have high structure. So unfortunately, you don't have those high structures in order to navigate through the uncertain times. So we have to put more structure in place. And there's a heck of a lot of training that needs to happen and changing of practices, as I've documented here for you.
Thank you, Susan.
Yes.
And thank you to the team.
Right, and thank you for the extensive memo, which is a lot to take in, but I think will be very helpful in preparing us for discussions with the advisory committee.
Did you say expensive or expansive?
Extensive.
Extensive, okay.
Am I systematically not being clear on what
It's
I said?
me, 70, whatever the other, so many.
Yeah.
So just to remind people that yesterday's meeting was recorded if they want to hear the extensive version, and you'll be giving us more details as you and the team are understanding what's going on. And I think the only thing we need to do right now is make a motion to transfer $1.2 million from the salary account to the non-salary side.
That would be great.
I'm not sure we can do that without it being posted first.
I think we should do it, and if for whatever reason we need to redo it, we redo it.
All right, so let's see if anybody wants to make the motion now.
I just did.
Okay,
That was me making the
that was
motion,
not
yeah.
just an encouragement.
No.
So you have moved it. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, Sarah, do we have any further discussion on this topic before we vote?
The motion is to move $1.2 million from the salary account to the non-salary account.
And is it exactly 1.2 million that we want to?
According to the memo?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
we have 69,000 available. We need another
No,
1.2 million to cover,
it's written in number one.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, so this can't wait. All right, so if there's no further discussion, and I see no raised hands, so let's take a vote. Stephen?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Susan.
I'll just stay up for the next.
Right, well, there is one item before you're back
Sorry.
up.
Okay.
But this,
Do we want to swap the order, but then Susan doesn't have to stay?
yeah, we could do that. I also, let's do that. So
Thanks.
we will
Do you want me
postpone
to,
for a
since we already
moment.
voted these, do you want me to just quickly
Sure.
skim them? Okay, so yesterday.
I do want one clarifying one when we get to the non-aligned memo.
Okay, so yesterday at Finance, the Finance Subcommittee voted unanimously to recommend to the full school committee a vote to extend the school bus contracts. There was a memo provided. The memo said that the service has been good and the staff recommends going ahead. And so, as I said, Finance unanimously recommended it. And so I would move that full school committee extends the school bus contracts.
Sorry, I do have a question that I should have asked yesterday about the school bus contracts.
Let's have it seconded before we.
Oh,
move on to
sorry,
the
sorry.
Questions and discussion. Would anyone second?
I second it.
All right, now Carolyn.
Sorry, new person.
It's also a somewhat new way of doing things, I think.
So, I can't remember what the amount was, something like $600,000 for
Yes.
the school. Can you just give a quick, like, what that represents? Or even, I think my memory is that like one school bus doing a round daily for the school year was something like 180 per year, $180,000 per year. Is that generally what we're talking about for however many bus routes are used?
Yeah, I believe there's 9 bus routes.
Okay.
And there's some routes where they do multiple routes. So, for example, at the high school, at the end of the day, there's an early bus and a late bus. It's the same bus, but it does double duty on the routes. So the 600,000 is for your regular education, like before and after school busing. And then you have before and after school Metco buses that provide transportation to our students in that program. So that's really what these two are. And then the third one is the one that Dr. Guillory mentioned in his report, which is for special education. So there's 3 bus contracts altogether.
Okay. And is 180, do you know off the top of your head, is the, like, in-district regular ed, did that stay around $180,000? If you don't know, that's fine.
I have nothing to pull from at this hour. I'm sorry.
I do remember we were told last year they were like 140, I thought. So, but again, I don't-
It's there, but I can't pull it out. Sorry. I'm happy to circle back and, yeah.
All right, are we ready to vote on the contract extension? Stephen?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Mariah?
yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Second item is a possible vote on non-aligned hourly rates and stipends.
Can I make my big pitch for the whole thing, and then you can make the clarification? So we discussed this yesterday at Finance as well. We unanimously recommended approval by the school committee. There were some questions and sort of the details of what this document represents, and I haven't actually gotten the chance to look at the cleanup, but I presume all the things we talked about cleaning up what was hourly versus, thank you. That's great. And what we really talked about sort of more broadly is this document represents sort of whether it's a first effort or a renewed effort, we'll say it's a renewed effort at really pulling together all of the different non-contractual payments that happen to staff so that there could be standardized rates and we could move ahead with shared information across the district about what these are. And there was some discussion around, for example, as one example, because I asked this question, does the BEEP extended day cost being charged actually cover the costs that are being outlined here? And so there's opportunities to continue to refine the analysis, but the Finance Committee appreciated the effort to advance our shared understanding and documentation of finance. So again, it was a unanimous recommendation from Finance, and I'll leave it at that.
Great.
Would you like to move it?
Well, Susan had to add one thing, and then
Yes.
I will move it.
One of the things I wanted to point out, so yes, a lot of what the work was between last night and tonight was just formatting, so that it was communicated in the same kind of nomenclature throughout the document. But there are a couple of changes. When I reviewed this one more time with our staff, I learned that, so if you turn to page 3, if you're looking at the document, if you turn to page 3, you'll see a few items that are in red. And those rates are different than what you saw last night. And/or new information was added because we discovered that there was an additional form of compensation that's non-aligned that we didn't have before on the old memo that I wanted to incorporate here. So if you just turn to page 3, I'll point those out. The one that you saw last night, under student intern rates, had 4 different colleges and universities that we had contracts with at the time the original memo was written, which was 3 years ago. Those contracts expired, and the only one that we have in place right now is Northeastern. So I eliminated the other 3 so that I wouldn't create confusion any more than I already have. And I put in the Northeastern intern rate for next year. So that, I wanted to point that out. And then under the mentored professional learning coach, we had the wrong number in that particular one, and then we added garden stipends. So those 2 were omitted on yesterday's, and we believe that we have captured all of the non-aligned. And this is important because when in my prior memo and the financial report, we talked about extra compensation.
Yeah.
And so this is another piece of putting that structure in, that it's clear that these are the rates. If there's a rate to be added, then a conversation needs to be had because it should be approved by the school board.
Which is why I will move school committee acceptance of this document.
Do we have a second?
Go, girl.
Thank you, Jesse. Any more discussion before we move to?
I just have one question, if you don't mind. Susan, is for the student intern rate, that 18,000, is that one student? or-
Yes, one student intern.
That's the 6-month period, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. 6 through the year, right? They're here for the year, yeah.
Classroom?
No, that's for the 6-month.
6 month. okay.
Yeah.
Well, I will.
You could defer to me as the Northeastern.
Northeastern.
Classroom?
They're building aids.
They're building aids, yeah.
So these are, yeah.
There's just one.
I think most of the buildings have 2, don't they?
No, they have 1. Now Pierce will have 2, 1 for each site.
Okay. 1 at a time, 2 per year.
That could be true.
Okay.
I just have the one, I don't know about that. I don't want to say. I don't want to.
Confused.
They actually get paid on an hourly basis, so I wouldn't want to get too far into it. And there's different rates depending on what year you are. But
Okay.
We can leave it at 18,500, and this memo will be refined going forwards in future years.
And I'll actually get to see the contract and I can speak directly to it.
Okay.
I have to collect all those contracts. That's another part of my other memo.
Stephen?
Why does this require a vote?
Because compensation is something that's in your bailiwick. So these are the ones that are not in, so contracts, personnel contracts, setting compensation is a responsibility of the school board. So that's why you have collective bargaining. You
So
set
is
the-
this an amendment to an existing bargaining
No,
agreement?
these are the ones that don't fall within a
Hence
collective
non-aligned.
non-aligned, exactly. So
I
just
see.
like you set the salary range for the superintendent, myself, other people that are on individual contracts that are not governed by a CBA. These are the other forms of compensation. The piece that you had the last time this was presented, but we have more work to do, also included all non-aligned positions. But that is so out of date, and I did not have time to do any market research. Obviously, without staff, you can't do those kinds of things, that I didn't bring that forward for you to accept because it really is outdated. So
I see.
that will be, next year, we'll be able to do that, and then you'll get the full memo as you had previously.
I see.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, thank you for helping me. So non-aligned means that they're not aligned with any existing agreement.
CBA, yes.
Okay, thank you. Susan.
Yes, yes. Yeah, good point, because I've never heard them referred to that way. That's a Brookline term. So yeah, it means they're not aligned to a collective bargaining agreement.
All right, I think we can move to a vote. Stephen?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Thank you very much, Susan.
Thank you.
All right, so our last item of business before subcommittee and liaison reports is a very brief preliminary discussion of one of our core responsibilities, which is to evaluate the superintendent. So DESE hands down an annual evaluation process. We're supposed to be assessing the superintendent's progress toward meeting certain goals as well as certain standards. And so the goals, and this can be kind of confusing, I believe are set by the superintendent himself. So the superintendent needs to define a professional practice goal, a student learning goal, and 2 to 4 district improvement goals. And then the standards are handed down by DESE, so those fall under the headings of instructional leadership, management and operations, family and community engagement, and professional culture. So each of those headings has a bunch of subheadings, along each of which were to evaluate the superintendent. So for the moment, I just wanted to float a timeline for this process and see whether folks were okay with it. The current plan would be that Dr. Guillory will provide the committee with a summary of his work toward meeting the goals and standards by June 18th. And then our workshop is on June 26th. So between the 18th and the 26th, the individual school committee members would submit their forms, which are provided by DESE and in fact are made public and posted on the school committee website. We would then discuss those at the workshop. And what we did last year was to actually go line by line through the evaluation form and kind of vote on what score we wanted to assign under each subheading. And then after that workshop, I guess it would be the chair's responsibility to sort of write an aggregate evaluation that embodies all the results of all the votes, as well as incorporating the free response comments that are also part of everybody's individual form. So are folks okay with that timeline? There's not a lot of time between Dr. Guillory submitting his evidence and us having to meet and discuss the evaluation.
June 18th is the last day of school, I think. And it's just like, for anyone who might have, or not, I mean, just having kids though and having them be home if they're home that's a really tight time. Is there any way to like?
This is done during the summer and many of us have kids at home over the summer, so I'm not sure why that particular week is.
It's just a short amount of time because you've got kids home during the summer and you're supposed to be writing an evaluation.
And there are other problems with having the workshop on the 26th. There are at least 2 of us who can't be there.
I can't be there either.
Okay, so that makes 3 of us at
Yeah.
least who can't be there that day.
I can't be there either. I have a board meeting. I didn't realize we were doing a Wednesday.
Yeah, it's currently like that day from 2 o'clock to 7 o'clock. So.
I was going to ask when it was, when Linus was talking about it earlier, because I was like, oh, when's that scheduled? So yeah, can we change that date?
Okay, so let's go back to the drawing board on the date. The early July may not work, so it might have to be postponed substantially if we're to postpone it beyond June. Yeah.
Just a question.
So Dr. Guillory, do you want, oh, sorry.
I just had a question. The first part was that Dr. Guillory sets the goals, and then we're going to get a summary against those goals next month, about a month from now? Is that what you said?
Yeah, right, June 18th-ish.
So is the first document available? The goals? Like whatever's been set already, is that available for sharing among the committee?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because
So just,
us,
I mean, we can have this conversation, but you can get a pass this first time because you've only been on a month. Well, you've been on one night, but.
Oh, yes, I forgot to mention that, yes.
So typically,
yeah.
if the very first year,
we wouldn't really.
you went way in because you haven't been a part of it.
Right, but it would still be useful to see
You
that
should
goals
still get
document,
the goals. You can get those.
even though we're going to be mute for the rest of it. Yeah.
And,
We'll-
sorry.
I was just say, if we're moving our date back, I don't know if Dr. Guillory needs more time or not, if that would be helpful.
Well, if we're moving it forward, that should take care of you could leave Dr. Guillory's submission date the same, and we could just move our workshop forward. No?
Well, maybe he needs more time too.
That's
Oh,
I'm just
sure.
asking if he needs.
Sure, sorry.
Well, I think what we'll do is, so when are we talking about the workshop at this juncture? We don't know.
We don't know, but I think if we postpone it at all, it would probably be postponed to probably the second half of July, yeah.
So if you push back, then what I'll do, I still want to get you the information in June. So I'll just commit to getting it completed. You to have at least 2 to 3 weeks of time with materials.
Can we disconnect the workshop from the evaluation? Like, could we just have a separate meeting that's just the evaluation so that even if the workshop is delayed, we don't have to delay the evaluation? Something for you to mull, Andy.
Well, I thought what we needed to delay right now was the evaluation meeting.
No, but not to the full second half of July. Like, could we do a short meeting earlier than then that's not the full day where people have to like,
Okay.
You know what I
Well,
mean?
let's take this offline and
Yeah.
see what works for
Okay,
everybody.
thank you.
Yeah. Suzanne?
I remember last year, we did not all do all the indicators, nor did we ask Dr. Guillory for evidence for all the indicators. So we had a different interpretation of the evaluation form. And I don't know if we need to discuss that, because I abstained for a lot of it, because I thought that I should only evaluate Dr. Guillory on evidence that he provided for the goals that he selected and the indicators.
I think it would, from my perspective, I think it would be very helpful to have another like evaluation 101 thing where, because I realized right when we were going through it, and I thought I did it right. I checked with like other people and then I still didn't do it right. So
Yeah.
it would be very helpful. I agree with you.
Right. I think it was hard to aggregate last year because people had different things they wanted to say in the evaluation, but everybody had a different notion of where to say a certain thing, right? Under which heading or subheading, yeah.
I mean, it's a clumsy format.
Well,
I mean, the evaluation's pretty
I think,
clumsy.
just one suggestion. I think, Dr. Guillory, if you want to put which goal, I think part of the problem is that we were attaching different goals to different parts of the evaluation. And so we ended up. Yeah, so we had it in different orders. So if you want to just propose which goal matches up to which part of the evaluation, then we'll just take your cue. And then we could have it, you could propose where in the rubric it fits in.
That would be
The other thing I wanted to propose, maybe this belongs to another conversation, is that now that we have the strategic plan, if part of the evidence you submit can also include the school year 24 goals, so that we can have evidence that you submit about the achievement of school year 24 goals too, or whatever selected goals from that you think we should, outcomes, thank you, that we should be evaluating.
For this particular year or for?
There were just a few for SY '24. Okay. So either the achievement of those outcomes or their deliberate postponement or their discardment or whatever it was that you deemed appropriate.
And Carolyn?
Even though I'm thankfully not going to have to participate in this yet, and I don't mean that disparagingly towards Dr. Guillory, are there previous copies of these available?
Yeah, it's actually public.
Okay,
I don't know how
like
long it's been on the website. Probably still
publicly accessible?
there.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we will work on rescheduling our written evaluations in the meeting to discuss them, but Dr. Guillory has undertaken to provide the evidence still by June 18th, so that's great for us. All right, so
The next step on that, a doodle poll from you, Betsy, for, okay.
Yeah. Let's move on then to subcommittee and liaison reports. So for capital improvements, Helen is not here. Does anyone else have updates on capital or building projects? I can make my comment. Mariah?
It's not much of a comment, but just that Helen and Betsy and Susan and I worked on the warrant Article 10 statement to town meeting that's in the combined reports. So that was submitted.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, moving on to curriculum, Suzanne?
We haven't had a meeting since the last time we reported. Our next meeting is Tuesday, I think that's the 21st, at 4 o'clock. The two big agenda items are taking a look at the grade 9 English classes and taking a look at world language grades 6 to 8. All are invited.
All right, DEIJ, Val?
We haven't had a meeting since the last meeting that we had, and in terms of government relations, the Senate Ways and Means budget came out and mirrors, mostly anyway, the House Ways and Means budget, which increases the per pupil rates, which are really impactful for Brookline, and also holds firm on the Student Opportunity Act and associated funding.
All right,
Can I
thank
ask a
you.
question about that?
Yes, Mariah?
Val, we already accounted for this though, right, in the 200 and whatever thousand that was already added to our budget for next year, is that right?
We did.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we have Mariah for finance and accounts payable warrants.
Thank you. So we met yesterday, as mentioned, and almost all of the key things we talked about have already been talked about today, but 3 other things. One is our next finance meeting is June 18th, which is the last day of school, and I'm wondering if we can move that one. Not a great day for afternoon meetings. And one update on the gifts that we voted to approve earlier today was I noted that the volleyball gifts was a pilot from last year, and requested that we get feedback on how that was going and whether we could implement that more broadly, because there are many different programs accepting donations through third-party portals which charge extortionate fees, administrative fees or other fees, as opposed to the district, which just charges, the town website, which just charges credit card processing fees. So it would be beneficial to our students and programs to bring that in-house if we can. So there will be a report at our next meeting about that. We only briefly talked about it, but Susan and team will be putting together a executive summary for town meeting, which starts on the 28th. And the goal is to get that into the combined reports, which should be sent sometime next week. Does anyone know what the date is? For not the supplement is what I meant to say. Not for when it's sent, but when it's due.
We got the other one, I don't know.
Yeah, so anyway, we're going to get that draft. But the nice thing is there's already the executive summary from the initial budget, so that will just need to be refreshed and updated with everything that's happened since January. And then report on accounts payable. So since the last time I reported, which was February 8th, so just about 3 months, we've signed off on $6,991,432 in expenses. And I'm trying to think if there's anything super exciting or notable in that. And I can't really think of anything super exciting. It's just a lot of food, and school supplies and transportation and tuition. And I guess that's all I've got to report on that.
Okay.
Oh, so just for our new members, this is required that someone signs off on these bills, and I sign off on them, and then report it out to you. And if there's anything very exciting, I'll let you know. Sometimes there really is exciting stuff, but mostly it's just like school supplies and food and such. So that's that.
The reason we keep talking about trout is that it came up on some of these accounts.
Yes, it was one of my favorite purchases that I would routinely report on, and so that's why the trout field trips were particularly poignant in the context of accounts payable. So, yeah.
Okay, next we have negotiations. Suzanne?
Yes, so we met this week with the BEU. This is on the BEEP concerns and challenges and issues. We started off with 16, we're now down to 8. That's what they recently presented us. We did a lot of listening. There were 8, yeah. We did a lot of listening, and it's now up to us to respond. So we're getting closer. We're not quite there yet. Was it positive?
Who is the negotiations subcommittee now that Andy has stepped down?
Yeah, I'm not there anymore. So.
Mariah's joined us.
Mariah's joined.
And Val is on.
And Suzanne is chair.
And I'm chair.
All right, thank you, Suzanne. We have policy. So our policy chair, David, is of course no longer with us. So unless somebody else has any updates on policies that we're working on, any additional?
I have one comment on policy and then one question for you. My comment on policy is that we received the notes from the lawyer on the policy, the day in the life policy, so that's helpful.
Life of the school.
Life of the school policy. Life of the school after school, I think was the latest name of that.
In fact, it turns out we've had that for a while. It just hasn't been circulated.
Right. I've been asking about it routinely, and they finally turned up. Anyway, so that's great news to continue to hopefully advance that. Andy, can you just give a timeline, of like when you'll be doing committee assignments and reassignments and other assignments?
Oh, I see. So our next meeting is in 3 weeks. I hope to have it done long before then. Yeah, right. Okay, any additional liaisons and updates?
Are you going to send out an email asking people what they want?
I'll be sending out emails and talking to folks.
Thank you.
Yeah. Stephen?
Just 2 quick things. One is I circulated an email updating the communications email response protocol, if you all want to take a look. I also sent out a proposed draft of communications norms. I invited Mariah, you, and Val to edit the document, bearing in mind that we can't collaboratively edit a document without violating OML. So perhaps we could include that on the docket for the workshop this summer.
Okay.
Also, I just wanted to mention with government relations, I attended on Tuesday Boston Globe, what's the word when you moderate something? Moderated. A panel on literacy again in the state, and they updated us on S263, which is the bill that's currently in Ways and Means on evidence-backed curriculum, and it continues to sit there. The only interesting thing about it was that Pete Domenico, who's one of the authors and co-sponsors of the bill, was there to update us on its progress, which is that it should move or not by June. So I'll just keep you apprised on the movement of that legislation, which should either give us momentum or not by the state. We're one of 13 states that does not have any statewide mandate to back our literacy curriculum with evidence.
All right, thanks, Stephen. Suzanne?
Just, to remind us, I think we've all signed up, but for those who are new that may not know, we traditionally attend at least one graduation, 8th grade graduation. So there is a form that Betsy sent, or Kathleen sent it out. Yeah.
Yeah, conveniently, there are like 9 schools and 9 committee members. So.
But there are like 15 events though, Andy,
Yes.
when you include the others. So there are about 15 events to cover.
Yep.
Right, so I've gone to ACE many times, SWS is fun. I mean, some of them are really touching and fun.
Metco was a lot of fun last year.
Fun.
Yep.
All right, any new business?
I I wondered if everybody here has been through the training to be a school committee member, if that's something that's significant or is going to happen again.
You should definitely do it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
we're
think it's
required to do
Should I
required.
try to do it with other two new members together? It doesn't matter. Okay.
It didn't matter in my experience. It was very unidirectional.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. And back in our day, it was online. It was Zoom. So I don't know whether now that things are in person again, this is also
It
in
was
person.
in person when
Yeah.
I did it, yeah.
Maybe it's less unidirectional.
Perhaps, yeah. I do remember being talked at over Zoom.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. We have no need for an executive session tonight, so I will adjourn the meeting. Or perhaps I need to move to adjourn and then we take a vote. No, I just adjourned the meeting. So, all right. Thank you.
Recording stopped.